You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver media podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good afternoon. I don't get to say that very often. Well, hello,
No, we do not.
kits and cubs. Welcome to season 3 and episode number 1, uno, of our special Alberta election series. We decided a few days ago that we would contact friends in the world of independent media and regular media whose work we admire and we appreciate, and ask them if they would like to be willing accomplices in a little project where, over the course of 3 or 4 weekends leading up to the Alberta election, we will talk about things Alberta. And then on the night of the election itself, like we did, I believe it was for the Ontario election, have a live election results show with some panelists and guests who will talk to us. So over the course of the next few weeks, we'll have a certain number of people chatting with us. Some people will come back, will be recurring. Some people will come in here and there. And hopefully all of them will be available to join us on May 29th for the election special. So that's what we're doing here on the Crier Media Network. Today, recording day is Saturday, April 1st. April Fools. So I guess I have to start by kissing Fool. Beautiful Fool. And now, but there's no joke. There's no joke. This is serious. We're doing this thing. It's a gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge. 13 degrees Celsius. Beautiful. We went out for a nice little walk this afternoon. It feels like spring. You know, that difference in the sun where you feel the warmth on your skin and it's really nice, as opposed to, there's just a little bit of warmth in this cold, where it feels warm. That was going on today, and that's always a very, very pleasant feeling. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronounced he, him, he, Mr. Beaver A, and with me, as always, is my dear friend, Mr. Grizzly. And, of course, a big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Before we get to things Alberta, first, we must say hello to our good friend, my constant companion, my pal, my brother, Mr. Grizzly, and ask you, how's your mental health doing today?
Well, hey, Mr. Beaver, good afternoon. And how's my mental health? Well, it's 5 o'clock on a Saturday. I'm on a podcast live, and I'm not in a pub. So I don't know. I'm very out of sorts right now.
Okay, you're out
It's
of your
5 o'clock. I'm usually in the pub right now having a pint, right? Or we're doing a pubcast. But yeah, so I don't know what to think right now. I've been editing stuff all day long. So I literally I went out for a walk. I went to the corner store to grab a slice of pizza and a hot dog because I realized there was nothing in the house to eat because I haven't done groceries in a couple of days.
Ooh,
So hot dog and a pizza, and I just had a petite soda. What is
yes.
that? 250 milliliters.
Okay.
It's
Good,
all the
good, good.
sugar that I take.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm fed. I'm watered, and now let's do this thing.
Yep. I think I would be. I'm not sure if the match started yet, but I'd probably be watching curling right
Oh,
now.
is it curling?
Yeah, the World Championships for men have started first match, and they're in Ottawa actually. So
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping to find some time to get there. I was going to go this week on Tuesday and Wednesday, but because my competitive Tuesday night team and my Wednesday night doubles team are doing well in the playoffs, I'm not actually free to go anymore. So if I have to go, I have to go tomorrow, or else I don't think I'll be able to fit any in whatsoever.
Hmm.
But there you go. Um, Hello to the kits who have joined us: Kit Elaine, Kit Jim, and Kit Jim, Kit Jim M, and Jim J. At some point, we're going to have too many of so many names. It's going to be hard to keep them to say hello to everybody. And
We'll
Kit
do the best
Saucy,
we
of
can.
course. Oh, yes. It's always lovely to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. Today on the show, we will have three guests joining us. I don't know if we're going to have the luxury of having some overlap in this case because
We'll
of
see.
schedules.
Yeah.
But we will be starting off with Nate Pike from the Breakdown Alberta. Um,
We'll bring
and
him in just a minute.
Yep, and then we will be continuing on with the good people from Albertastan Live. Um, I'm not going to do too much introduction in terms of what's going on in Alberta. We know that there's an election coming, and we know that this week there's been a lot of news, particularly about Danielle Smith, given that little video. But there's been lots of stuff before, right? There's been, for example, the arrest of John Carpay from that religious judicial group,
Hmm.
legal group, judicial Christian founded. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And then, of course, there was like the Tylenol thing, and then there was the Alberta sovereignty thing, and then there was all the gaffes coming out, and then there was her not running in Calgary elbow like she said that she would, and so there's been a lot. There's been a lot.
You
So
could say
why
that.
don't we just bring Nate in?
I can do
And
that.
yeah, we'll just get into it.
All right. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it
How are you
going?
doing?
I'm doing
Hey.
fantastic, thank you. I gotta say, you guys have two of the most relaxing voices I think that I've heard on a podcast. I could just nap.
We get told that a lot for some reason. I don't know what it
It's
is.
oh, it's
I mean,
it's
for him, I get it, but
oh, it's. I feel like I could just curl up in a ball.
Well, then you'll
oh,
have to tune in Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to my ASMR mental health chat.
There we go. See.
oh yeah, no, it gets silkier than this.
I'll use a studio mic for that one.
That's awesome. How you guys doing today?
Very, very well. How are you?
I
Good.
am in a constant state of alarm living in the province of
Mm.
Alberta. I think is probably the best way to say it, as it's there's a TikToker who I occasionally get to see TikTok. I don't do a whole lot of time on TikTok just because it's a dumpster fire. But there's a TikToker on there who does really, really good political commentary, almost
Oh,
sketches
I
kind
know
of
who you
things.
mean. I know who
And
you mean. She's
the ex-
genius.
yes, and the expression that she uses every damn day. So that's kind of Alberta right now.
Yeah. And her takes are so spot on.
Oh, she nails it. She absolutely.
Yeah.
I have nothing but respect and admiration for how she's able to navigate that format. Because if I tried to I mean, we'll post videos occasionally on TikTok that we pull from the show, but if I tried to do like a curated TikTok video, everybody would just be like, "What is that old white guy doing?" It wouldn't be good. So she crushes it.
Oh yeah.
Here, I have a clip of her right here. Actually, I'll throw it up in a sec here once I cue it up. Just a quick little bite, a nibble, if you will. Considering this is Beaver, anyway.
I saw what you did there. I saw what you did there.
I saw what I did. Here we go.
So yesterday in Alberta, Casey Madhu had a provincial update. Nobody cares what it was actually about because everybody was waiting to ask some other questions. And the reporters did. Now, if you don't know Casey Madhu, he's the Minister of Skilled Trades and Professions. He's also the Deputy Premier. He used to be the Minister of Justice, but we'll get to that later. Now, obviously, there were lots of questions surrounding his boss and the Crown because of the words that came out of her mouth. But Casey defended his boss. Kinda.
I know that Premier in the cliques that you guys are sharing talked about prosecution. But if you understand how our system works, and many of you in the media are very much aware of how our system is designed to work. But you are ignoring how the system is structured to work and focusing on Premier's reference to the word prosecutors and prosecution. The Premier cannot, let me be clear, the Premier or cabinet ministers have no mechanism to speak with prosecutors.
We know all that, Casey. That's why it's an issue. I mean, the clips that you're saying are being shared are actually the words that came out her mouth. And she said it with such confidence, as she does regularly. Now, I know you were getting a little grumbly. I'm sure there's been lots of questions and phone calls and emails. But you don't have to be a member of the media to understand how things work. And you're right. There is no mechanism where the Premier or ministers speak directly to Crown prosecutors. Again, that's why it's an issue. Because it's what she said. You cannot tell me a 50-something-year-old woman that has been in politics, has been a lobbyist, has been a talk show host, doesn't know the difference between the terms prosecutors, prosecution, ministers. Because we're still going with the story that she only talked to Shandro. I mean, you said it. It shouldn't happen. But we all think it did. Because of the words coming out of her mouth. Now, I know your job is to protect your boss, even when she's fucking up royally. And I believe that you believe the things that you're saying. But should we believe you? Remember when I said Casey used to be Justice Minister? Well, that's until he got punted for interference with administration of justice. He didn't like that he got a distracted driving ticket and thought he'd just call the chief of police to see if something could be done. Kind of like how Danielle said she talked to Crown prosecutors to see if something could be done. Interference in administration of justice, not your place. So if you did it back then, and we all know Danielle did it now, why would we believe any of you? I mean, Pulowski believed her, and look at where that's gotten him. A big old pile of nothing burgers. 59 days. 59 days.
She's so damn good.
She's very, very good at what she does.
It's really great.
Very, very good. But she sums it up really, really well because,
Yeah.
and I mean, even Madhu, it's funny. He was like, you guys keep focusing on the words. And even in that press conference, he used words in a way that was fascinating because he said, you know, the big question, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but the big question was, the big question that I ask myself is, do I believe that the Premier acted appropriately? The answer is no. And everybody kind of goes, wait, what? And then he kind of used some other words at the back end to try to be like, well, maybe that's not quite what I meant. But it's a fascinating time to be alive in Alberta when we don't know which words coming out of these people's mouths we should believe or which ones they mean or which ones are words.
I love it when they use words to dig a hole and then realize it and then try to backfill the hole.
Oh,
I could just
on her
imagine
radio
them like
show today. It was she has this weekly radio show that she does because she could never let go of that. In fairness, Kenny started it and she just kept going with it. But it's stunning to me that her people let her continue to do that show
I'm surprised it's
because
permitted.
oh, it's such a turd mine. Like there's never been a week where she hasn't gone and said something where you're like, wait, what? Without fail. Without fail, she does it every single time. So it's really quite a time to be alive.
Now, I was watching your latest episode, and there were a couple things that were interesting. Like, I liked that thing from Lisa because I had seen it after we did our most recent show, and we were talking about Madhu, and and there's a lot of points that she makes, and we're not in Alberta, so we're like watching it from here, and it's like, okay,
You've got the minimum safe distance thing going on.
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but
we're
we
not
got
in
Doug
Wisconsin.
Ford though.
Yeah, 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 but
We'd
you
still
see,
trade.
yeah, they'll still trade because whenever Doug Ford has a beer, somebody in Alberta holds a keg. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's
it's
a very
been
good way
like
to
that
put it.
for the last 2 years. It's like I did this. Wait a minute. So, but
Wish
there
that
was
was true.
something. There's things that there's one thing that you mentioned that really caught my eye that we did not know and we did not catch, and it's when you mentioned that Pulowski's video had actually been published on his YouTube site, I think
Mhm.
2 months prior to it actually coming to light.
Yep. That's the report, he said cautiously, to
Mm.
avoid
Okay, that's the report.
trouble.
Okay. And the thing that I found interesting is when you were showing the clips of her on her talk show, radio show back in 2019, where she's making it explicitly clear that she knows that what she is alleged to have done now, and basically what she says she has done now, because the question still remains whether or not she's just telling whatever constituency, whatever it is they want to hear, and she's just lying to everyone because she's having trouble keeping track of her.
Well, here's the thing that I think people who follow Alberta politics have accepted as a truth. Danielle Smith lies.
Yeah.
That's just what happens now.
Mhm.
She lies all the time. All the time. And that's, when I said earlier that Albertans don't know at what point do these elected officials mean what they're saying or understand what they're saying, or are they deliberately misleading? There's literally no way to know because she lies all the time. I mean, it's fascinating to me that she did one of the clips that I played was from a podcast that she did 2 weeks before that this whole thing happened. So 2 weeks before the conversation happened, if the dates that have been reported are accurate, she said on that podcast, "Hey, you know what? Some people they thought that there's all this American stuff. They thought clemency was a thing. Who would even think that?" And then here she is 2 weeks later with Pawlowski going, "I thought that."
Well, not only I thought that I needed to consult somebody legally to tell me whether or not that was the case or not.
When really any
And then
grade
she
6
says,
student could
and
tell her.
pardon?
Any grade 6 student in Alberta could tell her.
Right. And then she says, I thought we had the same powers of clemency we had in the US. We.
That's confusing.
I'm 50-50 on whether or not she actually said that. I've listened to that a bunch of times, and I can hear she speaks so fast.
Yes.
I can hear a they and I can hear a we, and it's sort of like that. Is the dress blue or is it gold?
Right.
Gotcha.
I don't want to pick one.
Okay.
So I mean, it's stupid no matter what. It's
But how do you know? But it's like the point you made was a 50-year-old woman, in former leader of a party, MLA minister. Is it MNA or?
No, it's an
MLA.
MLA. So she was
It's
an
MLA.
MLA. She was the leader of the opposition for a chunky years.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that she had a career before then. So she did
Right.
quite a bit of advocacy and lobbying before her days
Right.
as the Wild Rose leader, after her days as the Wild Rose leader. And the notion that somebody who has been immersed in the political system for 2 decades didn't know that we weren't the United States is something else.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
really is.
Like either she's lying or there's
goes
some
to
sort of
basic-
organic process going on here.
Right. Or goes to basic competence at this point.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. You mentioned also in that you talked about there was a third person on that call.
Yes.
Right. I do not know this person at all.
So this is you're about to get birded hard
Okay.
because
Okay, hold on, let me get some water here.
yeah, you're gonna want to brace yourself, perhaps a warm blanket.
My. All right.
So the other person on the call, and this is the person, Smith confirmed this today on a radio show as well. This is the person who facilitated the call, let's say, and as some on Twitter have pointed out, it would have been his name on the call record, not Arter's. So that's convenient.
Mhm.
But his name is Dr. Dennis Modry. I think we still call him doctor. I'm not sure because he's not actually licensed to practice medicine anymore. If we go back to the start of COVID, Dr. Modry wrote an open letter because he's retired and not allowed to practice medicine anymore. So I guess he's got some free time, where he basically said, it's all a lie. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, no lockdowns. It's all he's a cardiologist. He's not an immunologist. He's not a virologist. He's not a public health expert. So much so that the college that manages physicians out here in Alberta came out and said, hey, so about that guy, he's not actually licensed to practice medicine anymore. Do with that what you will.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
he's over there. But
Yeah.
he also is part of an organization. He was part of an organization called the Alberta Prosperity Project, which is, depending on the day, either an advocacy group, a separatist organization that's trying to become a political party, or a bunch of other things. But they've got a lot of really, really far right people involved. The same names keep popping up over and over again. One of their
What's the
sorry,
name of the fella from Take Back Alberta? The guy organizing
that's
that.
David Parker. That's a whole separate problem.
Yeah, I was reading about him today, and his credentials are homeschooled. That's it. That's
Well,
his credentials.
he does have a career in
Mhm.
politics as kind of a staffer. So
Yes.
he's played from a formal education standpoint, there's not a whole lot going on there, but from a experience learning the game and how the wheels turn
He
and
has
how to
been at
go.
it for a while.
Yeah,
Yes.
he knows what he's doing. I mean, I have a lot of issues with Mr. Parker. I have a lot of issues with Take Back Alberta because they're destroying the province, but
Mhm.
um
Well, he's a religious zealot too, is he not?
he's got some beliefs,
Yeah.
but he's not to be underestimated. And this is one
Oh,
of the
no, 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 no.
mistakes that I think that we're seeing start to people start to realize here in the province is that they have taken a look at some of these groups and they've gone, they're nutters. It's nothing to worry about here. But the problem is the last 3 years have been a boot camp of sorts
Mhm.
for people with extreme views who want to spread those extreme views. The pandemic gave them 3 years of time to organize, to network, to make friends, to learn strategies, to figure out what works, to figure out what doesn't. They are, I would argue, more prepared and better resourced than most of the political parties and the political actors here in Alberta right now. They've got game. And
Mhm.
to dismiss them, as I've seen some people do, out of hand because, oh, they're crazy, um, is extraordinarily dangerous.
I've got a quick breaking news report here. I'm just going to go to this real quick, gents. We've got some stuff happening on Parliament Hill right now. Let's just take a look. There's supposed to be a massive protest, and nobody showed up. There's nobody there.
Is Danielle Smith out front filming another video?
Probably, yeah. This was the
That
shutdown.
was an obscure reference for everybody for a video that Danielle Smith filmed where she basically said, hey, you know what? The settlers and the First Nations people, they all worked together. It was great. Nobody had any problems.
Mm-hmm.
Not a one.
We're doing great over here in Alberta.
Well, I lived in Alberta for 6 or 7 years. 6 years? 6 years. Yeah, 6 years in Alberta. I used to live in Cold Lake. Both my sisters were born in Alberta. One in Calgary, one in Cold Lake. So, I got some Berta. I got some Berta cred every now and then when they dump on me because I'm this white collar elitist who works for some government thing and lives in $1 million condo in downtown Ottawa, and I'm paid by Trudeau. None of that is true.
I just found
that
out.
is true.
I just found out before I hopped on that apparently the Breakdown is government funded, and if that's the case, I'd like to know who I have to call to get that funding.
No kidding. Like, can you get us some funding too while you're at it?
I mean, I'm sure it's all part of some sort of George Soros network
Of
that I can
course.
absolutely make that happen. Let me just call up Klaus Schwab. I'll hook you up.
Cool. We'll get the WEF in there somehow, and we'll all get
Absolutely.
connected.
So, could you tell us more about the Slayton guy?
Well, so it's Dennis Modry,
Okay.
and he was the president of an organization called the Alberta Prosperity Project, and that is the organization that ran the fundraiser / leaders debate that was also co-hosted by the Rebel,
Oh.
which was revealing, let's say. It was Dr. Modry and Ezra Levant who were asking all the questions. So they were totally non-biased questions that weren't in any way leading, and absolutely none of the leadership candidates who attended, of which there were only 4, took the bait on that. All of them took the bait. So that was the thing. It's. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole with Dr. Modry for days and days and days and days and days because there's just so much controversy. But he's one of the people that Danielle Smith cited during her pre-leadership run as an expert on pandemic response. Even though, again, like when the College of Physicians and Surgeons has to say, whoa, he doesn't practice medicine anymore, he's not an expert in public health, pump the brakes. When a body like that has to issue a statement like that, that's not a small thing. But Daniel Smith has taken his thoughts as gospel in a lot of ways. So he's the one who facilitated the phone call with Pulowski.
Okay.
He's also reportedly running for the UCP in Edmonton. So
yes, I saw that.
No conflict.
Yeah, part of his.
David Parker. We could talk about Take Back Alberta too, because that's a whole other rabbit hole that's heavily influencing the election in this province. David Parker. I mean, yes, as per his bio, he's the homeschooled son of a pastor, and that's a dangerous word in this province these days. But he also, the whole Take Back Alberta movement, it presents itself as this grassroots movement that sprang out of the fact that a UCP candidate, potential UCP nomination candidate was blocked from running for that nomination because he had some white supremacist things going on in his social media a couple years ago. He was blocked from being a nomination candidate, and so Take Back Alberta sprung as a grassroots thing, except it's not. It goes back to the Pacific Prosperity Network. I think I'm getting that right, which is out of BC, which is funded by, was originally funded by the founder of Lululemon to try to influence elections in BC. So the surface of the thing is very, we're fighting for democracy, and the roots of the thing are, and we're getting paid. So it's a lot more complicated than they're presenting themselves to be, as seems to be the case. I mean, there's no shortage of examples. We could talk about Our Star, for example. So Our Star is a program that is literally corporate welfare. Basically, the way that the program has been proposed is we've got all of these abandoned wells, which are wells that are no longer producing, that are still in an oil company's or a gas company's inventory, but they haven't taken the time to clean them up yet. Gas company still owns them. And that's a really important distinction to make because people seem to conflate abandoned wells with orphan wells. Orphan wells are wells that all of the companies are gone bankrupt and the province is just screwed with those. So we got to pay to clean those up ourselves, in effect. That's one of the things that the federal government gave us $1 billion for a couple of years ago. But abandoned wells are wells that are still in a company's inventory. The R-Star program says, hey, you know what would make these companies take care of the responsibilities that they're supposed to take care of by nature of the fact that they pulled a boatload of money out of the ground? We should give them more money. That's literally what the program is. And so this is something that Danielle Smith lobbied for. This is before she became leader, and it's a program that since she got in, she said, hey, you know what we should do? We should give the oil companies more money because I bet they'd clean up the wells then. So it's
just beyond disgusting. It's beyond disgusting when you consider there's homeless people on the streets of Edmonton and Calgary, the two biggest cities in the province, a large homeless population. And even though Calgary is a little further south and has a slightly milder winter, it still gets pretty bloody cold there in the wintertime. And she's giving billions of dollars to billionaire companies, $1 billion companies, to do what they're contractually supposed to do from the beginning.
Well, the kicker is
it's
the really fun
disgusting.
part is when you take a look at how the money from the feds came down, because like I said, the feds gave us like $1 billion. You can round that one way up or down.
Mhm.
But they gave the feds gave Alberta this money and said, hey, how about you use this money to clean up some of your wells? And the oil and gas company said, you know what, we'll do that. And then they spent, and I'm pulling numbers out of the ether just to make an example here, they spent $250 million on cleaning up wells. But they only used the federal government money to clean that up, and all of the money that they would have normally spent of their own, well, we held on to that. So we'll use the taxpayer money to clean up our junk, but we're not going to use the money that we've made, because why would we?
Exactly. So it doesn't become in addition to, it becomes in lieu of.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't, there was no, and they've done a couple of reports. I think the Parkland Institute just recently did a report on this where they took a look at the number of wells that were cleaned up over that period of time. And despite the infusion of $1 billion, nothing changed. The same rate of cleanup occurred.
Didn't a tailing pond just give way the other day? I might be incorrect on that.
It's funny when you say the other day, because it actually happened almost a year ago.
Was it a year ago? Wow.
It only got public in the last like month and a half. It only
Right.
came out
Whoa.
that this
Yes.
thing has been leaking for a prolonged period of time. They just didn't want to talk about it.
Gee, I wonder why.
It's almost as if it's, it would really be problematic if there was, I don't know, like First Nations land that was up there, because why would First Nations folks have any sort of concerns about drinking water in Canada?
Yeah. No kidding.
They've never mentioned it before, like ever.
That's not a problem.
No.
No, we don't have like this big national promise that we were going to try bring drinking water within 5 years. That the same part, well, the kissing cousins of the people who are doing this keep on using as a cudgel to beat the prime minister over the head with, because it's not done yet.
Yeah.
Forget
I mean,
about
the
the whole
stats-
global
the-
pandemic, right?
But yes, because when we get to the provinces, then we forget that was about water.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, for context, just in case anybody thought that I wasn't being wildly sarcastic, there's currently something like 34 drinking water advisories that still exist in First Nations across Canada. 73% of First Nations water systems are at high or medium risk of contamination. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And when one of the First Nations in the affected area was like, "Hey, we've got some questions," Danielle Smith's response was, you're misinterpreting everything. It's fine." And it's almost as if, like, if you weren't a lying liar who lies all the time, maybe you could get away with that line. But given the history and the audience, it would still be a really bold choice when you factor in the lying liar who lies all the time, who, by the way, also claimed Indigenous heritage,
Yes.
Which she doesn't have.
which she doesn't have.
Yes.
I can't imagine why First Nations folks would be a little bit like, I don't know about you.
Yep. And there's a similar issue in Saskatchewan, right, with the Saskatchewan First Act, where all of a sudden it's sort of, well, we added a line about you.
Yeah. So
Well, when she proposed the Alberta Sovereignty
it was a
Act, which,
line,
by
all
the
right.
way,
That
was-
kind of line, right?
the Sovereignty Act was created in part by her executive office director, a guy named Rob Anderson, who's a lawyer. When they created, presumably the same guy who throughout her leadership campaign didn't say, yeah, clemency is not actually a thing you could do. He just didn't mention that, I guess.
He's her lawyer, but he let her run a whole campaign claiming that clemency was something that she could do, when in 2019 on her show she said it's something that can't be done.
Yeah, pretty much. So he was the architect of the Alberta Sovereignty Act.
He's like, okay, so that's the guy. Yeah, when we talked about
Rob
it. So yeah, he's the other player in this. Please tell us more about this Rob Anderson guy, because he seems to have his fingerprints on everything.
He has his and Danny's history go back. So they first started playing together during the Great Double Floor Crossing of Alberta.
I thought you were going to say double Dutch.
No. I
Sorry.
mean, who knows? Maybe, but no. There was a period back in the day when the PCs weren't doing so great, and Rob Anderson said, these Wild Rose guys, which were the Lake of Fire folks, they look like they're good. They look like they're going places. I'm going to say goodbye to the PCs. I'm going to hop on over to the Wild Rose. And he hung over there for a little bit before he convinced Danielle Smith to join the PCs. So she
So
and a
skating to where the puck is going is not a strong suit.
no,
Okay.
because shortly after the Great Floor Crossing, the PCs were routed and the NDP were elected in 2015. So,
And then in 4 years, they destroyed Alberta completely.
this is what I hear. I mean,
I'm sorry. The 50 years of one-party rule that preceded had nothing to do with it.
no, it
Just
was
restart the countdown.
it's certainly not global economies or a global recession. That had it was all that Rachel Notley. But see, that's
Maybe she gets shit done, eh?
I mean, yes.
I'm sorry.
It is literally at that laugh and cry point because it's so ridiculous and it's so over the top every single day. Like there's one of the big conversations that keeps coming up in Alberta politics is that we are past the point of normalcy. We are at the place now where there's no such thing as political norms anymore. It is quite remarkable that there was a candidate in Lethbridge West for the UCP who had some thoughts that she felt the need to share on video about things that aren't true. We might have gotten sent that video and maybe shared it a little.
Yes.
It got a couple of views. And she was, depending on the version of events, first the UCP was like, hey, that video is a little problematic. Could you delete it? And she made it private. And then the next day it was announced that she was resigning, not because she did anything wrong. Not because she said anything that was false. She was resigning because people were using her concerns about the kids to attack the party.
Yeah, we have a little video here, Mr. Grizzly. She took it down, but there is a news report from a Bridge City News that has a few elements from it.
Announcing her formal resignation from the UCP Thursday. Lethbridge West candidate Tori Tanner is stepping down, stemming from claims she made in this video posted to social media.
We as parents are in a unique position to protect the innocence of our children. Yet alarmingly, we are seeing increasing instances where kids, even those attending kindergarten, are being exposed to pornographic materials, or worse yet, having teachers help them change their gender identity.
Tanner was vying for a seat in the Alberta legislature to represent Lethbridge. A statement from Tanner reads, during the nomination process, I made a video that at its core spoke to my commitment to protecting children. However, it's clear that my choice of words have distracted not only from the issue I was trying to discuss, but are being used by my political opponents to hurt our chances of winning across the province. Tanner's comments on the video were immediately called out by many, including from the Alberta Teachers Association, saying the video was spreading misinformation.
We should be talking about funding, curriculum, class size, the composition and the needs of our students, especially after the pandemic. But here we're having a conversation about some lies that don't have proof from a candidate from the UCP.
Shannon Phillips, the current MLA for Lethbridge West, says Tanner's comments were blatant lies and do not reflect the community of Lethbridge.
It is the right thing to do that she stepped back. Certainly, she needs to learn a little bit more about this community. Maybe actually talk to some teachers and other educators in this city to find out the great work that they're doing every day.
Sociology professor with the University of Lethbridge, Trevor Harrison, says Tanner's resignation is no surprise, but that her comments might have a contagion effect on the rest of the party moving forward.
The biggest problem coming out of this was that the very real chance that kind of a contagion effect that other candidates in other places would be labeled much the same.
Premier Danielle Smith says she will be working with the local constituency and the party to appoint a replacement in the near future. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
I gotta jump in real quick on there.
All right.
because there's a couple of frames of reference that I think are important to highlight. Um, they were just lies. She lied. She
Period.
didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say I lied. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. She just lied. She made stuff up to scare people and drive people to her nomination race. But there's some couple other things that are important to highlight in regards to that whole piece there. First of all, she's not new by any stretch of the imagination. She was one of the people who filed an affidavit or filed a lawsuit against the government because she was especially sad. I guess more sad than everybody else because she felt the need to file a lawsuit regarding health restrictions because she wanted to see her family. So she is well into the anti-health restriction freedom folks crowd. But the other thing that I just feel the need to mention is the news agency there. They're a little what's the word I'm looking for? Jesus-y.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The Bridge City News is a very uh, they wear their cross on their sleeve, let's say.
Well,
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that was probably some of the most balanced commentary that I've seen from the Bridge City News. But they're strong with the Lord.
Okay, good to know. A little media literacy here. Now, here's the thing that we've noticed because, okay, you got Rob Henderson, who's got his fingerprints on a whole bunch of things, right? The Freedom Alberta strategy, the original sort of mandate of the Sovereignty Act, its purpose. Was the campaign chair, I
He was
believe.
Danielle Smith's campaign chair. Yeah.
Now the executive director of her
Yep.
office. And basically, and her legal advisor, it appears.
Well, based on Danielle Smith's own words from the Pulaski tape, it's fascinating because on one hand we have the public Danielle Smith who says, you know what, Tyler Shandro, he's my top lawyer. He's the guy that I go to for everything, for legal stuffs. And on the Pulaski tape, she didn't mention Shandro once. Except to say,
No.
well, I don't know if the minister's the one who's targeting you, Arthur. I'll look into whether or not that's the case.
But she does say that
Rob's her guy.
he specifically is the guy that's...
She can't commit to anything because she's got to talk to Rob. Rob's the one who keeps her, I believe, she out of the ditch was the expression that she used when it comes to legal advice, which is just so flavorfully ironic.
I was like, have you seen? It's like when you've like wound up in the ditch over the last 5 or 6 months. Were you looking down or
Well, you
up?
never got out of it.
Because if you think he saved you from going into the ditch, maybe you were face down and you didn't see the stars.
We have another guest in the green room, just joining us now.
Oh.
Good day, sir.
Hey. Hello, nice to see you, everybody, kids and Kubs. This is Richard Gordon from Albertastan Live. Hi, welcome to the Beaver Lodge. Nice to see you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome, glad to have you.
Great.
I got another thing here. Somebody just sent this to me, so I'll share it really quick. It's really innocent. It's Alberta party leaders as hair metal rock stars. There's Danielle Smith. There's Rachel Notley. And there's the former premier, Jason Kenney.
See, all I see is Jack Black. I actually tagged Jack Black.
Yeah.
I just want him singing tribute right there.
We were just finishing talking about Rob Anderson, but I wanted to move the conversation to because we talked about Tory Tanner, and all of a sudden Danielle Smith is without Tory Tanner. But she's also without Travis Taze and Sonia Savage, who are Minister of Finance and Minister of Energy, which are probably like the two biggest ministers other than Justice and Health that you can have in Alberta. Why is everybody sort of just leaving?
Because they see the writing on the wall. Like it's not the same party anymore. And I think everybody's in agreement of that. Like, I don't know. I'm a big fan of the Breakdown. I follow you guys, and it's like every week is a frickin' car crash happening, and
Every
and
damn
I
day.
just and it's amazing. Like I have to wait till the weekend because of my personal schedule and stuff to go through this and parse this stuff out. But I mean, yeah, this party has leapt to the right to such an extreme degree that I think it's left a lot of conservatives behind in what has been traditional conservatism. And even like we've said before on the show, like these are not the good conservatives versus the bad conservatives. This is the shitty conservatives versus the alt-right ghouls. And it's really, like you said, it's surprising to see these guys jump ship, but even that milk has become too bitter to taste for some of the guys. It's hard for them to sit back and not admit that that's the reason why we're seeing these characters leave from the United Conservative Party in the first place. It's obvious that Take Back Alberta has become the dominant character in the discussion there, and they're bound and determined to push their what I would call fascist agenda.
I'd term it the same way. Well, I'd hyphenate it with the word Christo-fascist, make it Christo-fascist agenda.
Yeah. Granted, totally, yeah, for sure.
I think that,
and I mean, it's free to practice your religion, whatever, but it's the way that they're trying to force their religious wills and intents upon the people of Alberta that really troubles me. Sorry, Nate, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, it's cool. I was just going to say, I think in order to understand the complexity of the situation, all you have to do is take a look at what the predictions are for the election. The overwhelming number of predictions seem to indicate that at most we're going to see a difference of 10 to 15 seats determining who's going to be the governing party and who's not. It's going to be a very, very, very tight race. All of the polling, I mean, there's some polling that's a little bit more finely tuned that I put a little bit more weight in, but all of the polling is saying, oh boy, guys, this is going to be really, really tight. And here's where the problem exists for the Taves and the Savages and the air quotes moderates. All Take Back Alberta needs to have control of the UCP is whatever that number is. You don't need to control the whole party. All you need is 10 MLAs who are all playing on the same team. Jason Kenney was vulnerable during his last couple of years, and we saw that there was a group of renegade MLAs who came out and were like, we don't like COVID restrictions, and there's 15 of us. And Kenney went, okay, 67 minus 50, that's fine, because it wouldn't have forced him to lose government. But if we're talking about an election that's this close, everybody can read the writing on the wall that either Danielle Smith is going to lose this election and the NDP will win and, I don't want to be a part of that. Or the other thing that's going to happen is Danielle Smith will squeak by with a very small majority, and the Take Back Alberta folks are going to say, hey, there's like 11 of us and it's only, you have a majority of 8. So unless you want to lose your leadership and the government, you're going to do what we tell you.
Yeah, we have this thing from Philip Fournier, who from one of the most recent polls from Léger, and they're showing province-wide and Edmonton where the NDP has a big lead and the rest of Alberta where UCP has a big lead, and it really showing, like coming down to Calgary, they're showing 44-44. So in your opinions, what would be the difference there?
Well, Calgary, everybody has said Calgary's the battleground. Rural Alberta is going to go UCP by and large. Totally. And when I say rural Alberta, I need to be specific that we're not talking about necessarily the Lethbridges. We're not talking about the cities in rural Alberta. We're talking about rural Alberta. And rural Alberta is absolutely going to UCP. NDP have Edmonton locked. Nobody in Edmonton has to worry. I mean, even Casey Badu is probably going like, I can say whatever I want because it's not going to matter in a month and a half. But the Calgary is where the battleground is going to be, and it's going to be a very fascinating battleground because the NDP have not yet demonstrated that they've learned how to speak Calgarian. It seems like the majority of the NDP strategy has been, maybe if we just leave them alone long enough, they'll just self-immolate and it'll be cool.
We lost Richard for a minute, but as soon as he comes back, I'll bring him back.
Yeah. They have not done a whole lot to demonstrate that they speak Calgarian yet. And Calgary is a very, very, very different city than Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, what's going to be particularly fascinating about this election in Calgary is there's so much ridiculousness. Like, we saw this morning a UCP minister who had said like 6 weeks ago, all right, guys, I'm out. It's been great, but family stuff's can't do it. Thank you so much for the support, everybody. I'm talking about Rajan Sani, who was the MLA for Calgary Northeast. It was announced this morning, and I just can't believe they announced it this morning. Like, even Dwayne Bratt, who's like a political scientist and a commentator for years and years and years, even he was like, is this a joke? It is April 1st. Are they messing with us? And when that's even a question, when people are wondering, like, is this real or not? You're doing something wrong. But it turns out it is real, and Rajan Sani is going to be running in Calgary Northwest because she was appointed, so she didn't have to deal with the nomination. So that's Sonia Savage's old constituency. It is traditionally a very conservative constituency. Rajan Sani brings a lot to the table as a candidate there because she's lots of background in oil and gas, so she speaks the language of a lot of people in that community. She's very well spoken. She's a minister. Who doesn't like having a minister represent their constituency? So there's, and that's just one example. Calgary Elbow is going to be a fascinating battleground. It is. I know that there's a lot of people who are looking at some of the other smaller parties. Like, God bless Carrie Kundal in Calgary Elbow. She has to be one of the hardest working political candidates in Calgary, if not Alberta. She's been going at it for like a year now, and it's not going to happen.
Oh, darn. We just lost Richard for a little bit. He needs to
he's gonna
sort of reboot.
Yeah, log in and log out. There, he's back.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
That's much better. No worries.
I'll just imagine Nate made an astounding point that I'll agree with it in retrospect.
No matter what.
The kids in the chat are saying, because you mentioned really off the start, you mentioned that something happened today, and everybody's going, "What happened today?"
Yeah, the announcement that Rajan Sani.
That was it.
At like, I think it was 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock this morning. They were like, "Hey, it's a Saturday, and it's April
Fools.
What's the best possible time that we can release that we're going to drop in a candidate with no nomination who already said that they were going to resign?" Everybody will take that seriously, right? And again, like, I got up, and the number shortly after it happened, the number of super intelligent political commentators, operatives, everybody was like, "Wait, is this real? Are they messing with us?"
Yeah.
And it was real, which is,
it's slapstick comedy.
It is. Like, again, it's yet another example of, really though, is that where we are? Like, we're going to announce the drop-in candidate. You could have waited till afternoon, guys. Like, you'll still catch the evening news cycle. Plus, it's the weekend, so nobody cares. But like, you're going to drop it during. Everybody knows on April Fools, the jokes are only valid until noon, and then after noon, you can do whatever you want. It's got to be taken seriously, except apparently the people running UCP comms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beyond the pale. Sorry, I was just gonna say, every week you can't make it up. You really can't make it up. It just keeps coming, and it's like one train car piling into the next train car, and that's the party we have to deal with. Like, as progressives, we just. I mean, I've let me just take a step back, and like, when we started this, we were really like adamantly far left and whatever. And as you go through your sort of political development, you sort of come to the realization that at some point, you're taking on a centrist position to a certain degree with a progressive aspect, because you start to realize how things function and that. But like, I find myself over time moving further and further to the left as these parties keep moving further and further to the right.
Yeah.
And at what point, does the public sort of separate from that? Like we've seen in Alberta, and we talk about this a lot on the show, the tenacity for Alberta rural voters to take a punch in the face for either ideology or just for sake of party. And it leaves me, wanting much better for my province, but at the same time, I'm astounded at just how much of a beating the average Albertan voter is willing to withstand.
Yeah.
Just constantly voting against their own best interest too. It's I don't get it.
Challenge that a little bit, and I'll, if I can explain why. The reason why I would challenge that is because one of the problems that exists in Alberta politics is the difference in culture that exists between rural Alberta and urban Alberta.
Sure.
Really can't be overstated. I grew up in northern Alberta, rural Alberta, and the trick of it is that there's there's been baked into Alberta from pretty much its inception as a province, a tremendous distrust of the feds. And that is a cultural thing that has been handed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. And one of the other problems that you run into with it is the provincial governing parties for 44 years prior to the NDP did an exemplary job of making sure that the average Albertan was heard over and over. Equalization payments. Why are we still paying equalization payments? And anybody who drills down into that issue knows you don't make equalization payments, you receive them.
Yeah.
But if you talk to the average voter, if you go, even in Calgary, if you go down the street and you say, hey, what do you know about equalization payments? They'll say, I don't know why we keep making them. They're poorly misunderstood. They're talking points that have continually been weaponized. And when you've got people who are living in rural Alberta, it is almost impossible to overstate how hard of a life that can be. Like when we're talking about the folks who are doing agriculture, you're getting... I'll share this anecdote just to sort of give the severity of the pressure that a lot of people in rural Alberta face. When I first started working professionally as a paramedic, I worked in southern Alberta, rural southern Alberta, real rural southern Alberta, dry town southern Alberta. And
like Tabor.
Not very far. And it was not an uncommon thing to have a farmer come into the ER. Wouldn't call an ambulance because you don't do that if you can drive yourself. They would come into the ER and they would say, yeah, I've had this sort of pain going on for about 4 days now. I'm coughing up this pink fluid now. I think it might be a problem, but I had to get the chorin done. So, I had to go mend a fence. I had to go do X, Y, Z. And that's the reality. That is the demands of that lifestyle.
It's very true.
To say to folks who will literally sit with a heart attack for 3 days, hey, would you mind reading up on the economics of equalization payments, and don't just trust the elected official who, by the way, comes from 3 farms over that you grew up with, so you trust him because that's what you have to do when you live in rural Alberta. That's where the disconnect is. And to say nothing, in fact, I hate to belabor this point, there are still huge parts of rural Alberta that don't have access to high-speed internet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So there's part of the challenge that exists is in the same way that I was saying, I don't know that the NDP has learned how to speak Calgarian yet. They definitely haven't learned how to speak rural Alberta yet.
Yeah. Well,
we have our other guest has just joined us, Mr. Hugh Gordon. I'm going to bring him on into the show. There
Oh
we go.
no!
Hello, sir.
Hello,
Is there
sir.
room? Is there room for all of us here? I don't know.
Yeah. There's plenty of room.
Just kick this guy out right now. Thanks for having me. Good to join you, folks. Yeah. Sorry, I kind of jumped here in a little late, and I was just catching what Nate had to say. And
like we say here, we don't care when you arrive, so long as you arrive.
hi, Nate. Good to meet you. I guess virtually. Here we go.
I think you hit it on the head, Nate. You're absolutely correct in what you've just described. I couldn't agree with you more. And I know that there are politicians in and from the province of Alberta who play to that equalization payment myth. I know this because a very well-educated friend of mine who ran for political office in the province in Calgary, she didn't get elected. She came to visit me pre-pandemic, and we were having a conversation one night, and she was saying, well, here's why I support Jason Kenney. He's going to put an end to equalization payments. And I said, whoa, stop right there. He wrote the rules on it, number one. Number two, everybody pays into the same tax base, and it's distributed from there. There's no equalization payments coming from Alberta going out to anywhere else.
Right.
Well, I go, no. You're running for office. You should fucking know this. You should know this. I'm a working class stiff, and I know this. You have your master's degree. You're running for political office in the province of Alberta as an MLA. You should fucking know this.
Especially since equalization is a big issue. And it's what you're mentioning. I think what you're saying is, we've mentioned this on the show, is that mythology is tough to beat. You have people that have been, it's like Paul Olive, they've been soaking in it like for years. Like it's almost like in the United States, right? Like we're the freest country in the world. You hear that like from the time you're in the womb.
Yes.
Right. You get that 9 months of programming before you pop out. And I believe it's similar there, that mythology in Alberta that
Ottawa wants to screw you.
Well, let's be honest, gentlemen. They do know. They do know how it actually really works. They're not stupid. Yeah. They're constantly playing on these myths that they have themselves fabricated and then built up for political, self-interest. That's what it's all about.
I think there's a lot of them that don't know, though. Like
the politicians know.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do. Honestly, I don't think
a lot of maybe now,
because
it's been so diluted.
Another pointless anecdote. I made the mistake of running in 2019. We all make mistakes. I think it's important that we own them. Like Ralph Klein would do. But that was a Danielle Smith joke. I ran in 2019, and one of the debates that I attended, the UCP candidate for the area, she was asked a question about GSAs, and boy, if you want to get me fired up in a real big hurry, bring that topic in, because I go to the mat all day, every day. And she was asked this question about GSAs, and she was like, well, teachers aren't allowed to tell parents they're not allowed to tell anyone if the kid says that they're going to harm themselves. And if my kid was suicidal, boy, I'd sure want to know. And it was a rapid fire round. So, and that she believed that. That wasn't just a line that she was saying. She absolutely believed that. And then they came to my turn and they asked me a question about pipelines. And I said, well, I'll answer your question about pipelines. But first I need to say everything that she just said is completely wrong. A teacher has a legal obligation, if they believe that a child is at harm, to report that, period, end of sentence. And you can go back and watch the video, and in the background, she's literally yelling, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And so we start with this base assumption that the people who are running for office know anything about anything. And 9 times out of 10, they don't. Take a look at Tori Tanner. She campaigned on the pornography being shown to kids in kindergarten. She's a homeschooling parent. Her kid has not seen the inside of a kindergarten class, but this is what she heard, and she absolutely believes it.
But here's the thing I don't understand is that if that were actually true, wouldn't have somebody mentioned it before her?
That's why it's so horrible, though. Well, don't you see? They're getting away with it. That's the mentality, because they take it as facts. And then if you talk to anybody in a real conversation, any of the people who went down the COVID rabbit hole, they believe it. You can give them, you can line up epidemiologists, you can line up pathologists, you can line up virologists, and you can say, here's all of the actual truth, here's all of the actual evidence. And it doesn't matter, because they started with this place of this is the true thing. And everything flows from that. This is part of the reason
they ended up down the rabbit hole. But here's the reality, okay, is, yeah, conservatives uniquely have this, have been able to manufacture a number of these myths and punch up the amygdala. But the conservative strategists know full well what the hell's going on. They know full well what works with their base. I don't know if you follow Charles Adler at all on Twitter, but this guy is he's knocking it out of the ballpark right now, just pummeling conservatives over the head for doing these kinds of things, knowing full well the lies that they're perpetrating amongst their followers. Tori Tanner ended up falling down the rabbit hole on this one. But she's, she's just a symptom of a particular strategy on the part of the conservative movement in general and the UCP for certain, to do this sort of campaigning because they think it wins them votes. Sure, you're going to get those people that are going to be like, I really believe it. Well, yeah, there's a lot of crystal fascists that believe a lot of crazy stuff. But you don't see this. This isn't a problem amongst Liberal Party candidates. This isn't a problem amongst NDP Party candidates where they believe these mistruths, misinformation, and swear to it, and then want to stump on the campaign for it. So they know full well what they're doing. That's the problem. And getting back to equalization, they know full well what the deal is on that too. And the irony of ironies is anybody that knows anything about the program, that I try to explain to my very serious conservative friends in Alberta, is that if you want to save some bucks going to out of Alberta into Quebec, for example, you might want to think about raising your taxes on the rich and corporations. You might want to think about a PST. Why is that? Well, because guess what? In the equalization formula, it all depended on a province's capacity to raise revenue. And the more that that's restricted, and Alberta is not by any measure, okay, you'll get more money. So that's how the system is set up. But good luck communicating that to them. And you start talking about it. Douglas was right. This was the birth child of Stephen Harper and Jason Kenney. So a lot of times, we might argue and disagree about whether or not these people believe it or not. But I think really at the end of the day, what's really incumbent upon all of us is to blast through these myths with facts, with evidence. Ask for sources. I'm change my mind. Go for it. Give me some information that might, educate me, and I might go, yeah, you got a great point here. But you have to challenge it, right? And Rich and I talk about this on our show all the time. How do you challenge these great conservative mythoses, and how do you put them in their place, and how do we educate our viewers, our listeners, and all of us? I think we do that all to a very good degree, and it needs to be continued because there's this entire right-wing conservative machine in the media, institutions, think tanks, and the like, which are spinning these narratives and portraying them as facts and evidence. And of course, they know full well this sucks in a good chunk of their own followers. So that's what needs to be parsed out from some of these candidates and some of these policies. And, although perception sometimes, and sadly in politics, is everything.
The thing that troubles me to such a degree is the fact that they continually get away with the bullshit. They continually get away with the lies. Nobody holds their feet to the fire on it. And it's like one of the reasons this program started, this show, was Douglas reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join in. And I was like, yes, instantly, because I was so sick of politicians lying to us, and not even creative lies that are so easily proven to be lies with a 2-second Google search. Like, no, we can't allow this to continue. We need to make sure that the average Canadian gets the true story, the real facts. And since they don't want to listen to mainstream media, well, how about alternative media like us? Because we don't have an agenda other than get the truth out there. That's our agenda. Get the truth out there.
One quick point on this that really needs to be it's got to be taken more seriously. We see the federal government with C11 trying to like do this little dance around how to handle social media and misinformation online and hold all these big social media companies feet to the fire. But the issue is bigger than that. We don't really have like a fairness in broadcasting or fairness in journalism act. We don't have the fairness doctrine like they used to have in the United States. It came to an end under Reagan. And this is really, the natural consequence of not ensuring or taking some steps to ensure that the truth matters. And so that's really the tough part. And more of that needs to be done. And we lament all the time, Rich and I, about post media and the Sun chain. And they put these twerps like Gunter and Bell and Lilly, and the list goes on. These guys just continually get recycled and regurgitated amongst these right-wing media outlets. But they put these guys' opinion on the headlines of the front page and pretend that they're facts.
Yes, and that's troublesome.
Another serious issue. But yeah, for sure. Like, how do we get to the truth? And we're talking about supporting, journalism, and I think it needs to be supported, but not opinion. And I think the real question is, how do you fight that? And good question.
That's a good point. I just wanted to chirp in if I could. But Max Fawcett makes this great point about this, that a lot of this stems from the change of revenue generating that these parties used to do. So before, they used to get per capita votes, money from votes towards their party to help them run campaigns, and now they're completely dependent upon, as changed by the Harper era, they're completely dependent upon the social media to run most of their campaigns. And how do they do that? It's through the rage click. And this is this culture that we're dealing with all the time. We talk about the attacks on
I think you got an echo.
We talk about the attack on the amygdala, about the generation of fear, and we're seeing it being echoed here with that Tanner, that lady's video that was just completely an attack on the LGBT community and teachers. This culture of privatization that's entered Alberta politics for our school systems and that type of thing. So I think a lot of this has to do with our wrangling of social media in the province, not in the province, but in the country, and getting a handle on these guys and their spreading of alt-right propaganda that we see. Like, most of these guys who are lashing out and becoming violent, their Facebook feed is primarily driving a lot of this content that they're exposed to. Not only that, but other social media platforms that have seen lurches to the right over the last few years in content. Not the least of which is YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, which has always been a long time offender of this particular stuff. Anybody who's paying attention to progressive politics knows that, like, their YouTube algorithm lurch to the right. And that's, it's simple as that there's an overwhelming presence of these folks on social media, and their information and their content is not challenged at all by those platforms.
I think part of it, though, is also the way that the message is delivered. Like, if you juxtapose if you boil it down to its core, what is conservative media messaging saying? And at the end of the day, what they're saying is, it's not your fault. All of these things that are happening, it's not your fault. You take a look at what progressive media tends to say, and it is, well, here's everything you're doing wrong. You're not recycling enough. You're not being green enough. You're not being active enough. You're not XYZ enough. And that makes it a lot harder for people to be engaged in. But the other big advantage that I see that the conservatives, air quotes, and I got to be clear again, like a lot of these people who are portraying themselves to be conservatives, I would not call conservatives. I go back to this all the time on the show. My grandfather was both of my grandparents grandfathers were heavily involved in politics. They would absolutely have identified as conservatives. And if they took a look at what's passing for conservatism in the province of Alberta right now, they would stare at it like a dog just shown a card trick. Like it doesn't in any way look like what conservatism used to be. But the big difference between conservatives and progressives is conservatives can choose their blind spots. Danielle Smith can hang out with Artur Pawlowski. She can hang out with David Parker because it's politically expedient and it moves the movement forward. Progressives will light their hair on fire and fracture at the earliest opportunity all day, every day, period, full stop. And it's that when you combine those two things, so on the conservative side over here, we have, hey, you know what? I'm going to accept you. Even if you're a racist, even if you're a bigot, you can still come and hang out. It's cool. Also, none of this is your fault. And you juxtapose that with, hey, everything's fucked and we're all responsible for it. And by the way, I'm not sure if those shoes are hemp enough. Which party are you going to? If you're not a politically engaged person, if you're not somebody who looks at the whole equation and goes, maybe I do have a boatload of privilege. Maybe I am a middle-aged white guy that I'm not scared when I walk down the street in downtown Calgary. I'm not worried about somebody coming up and causing problems with me because 9 times out of 10, people are walking across the street to get away from me. I don't have to deal with any of that fear. Why do all of these other people seem so afraid? If you're not willing to ask yourself that question first, it gets really, really hard to stay in the realm of progressive politics.
Agreed. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there.
Let's get heavy.
We're going to be at this all day, guys.
What's that? I think we lost you there for a sec.
You kind of froze for a bit, so we don't know
I
what you were
froze?
saying.
Go figure.
Yeah.
No, Paul did.
Oh, okay. Oh, I was just about to say that you're absolutely right that it's not a conservative movement. It's a Christo-fascist movement. And people don't like it when I say that. And I'm like, well, you don't have to like it. It's a fact. Because they're heavily bringing in their fervent, extremely bizarre religious beliefs. And I say bizarre because it doesn't follow any typical Christian doctrine of any way, shape, or form, because it's filled with hate. And if you actually ever, went to church and listened to the word of Jesus, and I'm not getting preachy here, but, I was raised a Catholic lad. Jesus accepted everybody and preached love. So why are these people going on about preaching so much hate and divisiveness and think they can bring it into politics and that we're just going to accept what they tell us? They think how I should be living my life. Then they'll go on about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but they've clearly never read the damn thing. And if they have, they clearly didn't understand it.
It's Republican Jesus now, by the way.
Yeah.
Republican Jesus. Yeah. Gotta love that YouTube video. This is a line of thought that Rich and I have. Maybe we haven't talked as much about it on the show, but we certainly talk about it in between shows and planning for shows. And kind of what you're touching on there, Nate, too, is what is conservative? What does it mean anymore? And if you think about all the significant pillars of conservatism we've been force-fed for the last 30, 40 years now. What has it been? It's been, the destruction of the union movement, the lowering of the minimum wage, suppressing of wages. It's about lowering of taxes on the wealthy and corporations. It's about programs of severe austerity and these free trade agreements, which are not about trade, they're about movement of capital and profits out of the country and your community. And you take a look at all of these policies that they have, thrust Canada, the United States, the rest of the world, Western economies, thrown them all into kind of chaos with these policies. Now we're starting to see, late stage capitalism, a few major crises, and now what's the response? What's their policies? Like, they're running out of ideas. And what is Pierre Poilievre's only idea right now to deal with problems? Cut government spending, lower taxes. People aren't stupid. Like the walk on Wall Street, right? What was that called?
Occupy Wall Street.
Thank you. Sorry, my bad. These things still reverberate with people. The 2008 mortgage lending crisis, the meltdown across the world. What's happened recently with COVID, and how corporations and the rich made out like bandits, but you and I, Joe and Jane Lunchbucket, didn't. What policies have these guys got? And what they're finding is these things don't have traction with the broader public anymore. Like, you want to blame Trudeau for all your problems, but you do the polling and people are like, yeah, like, he's better than the alternative. Why? Because at least he's trying to address some of these issues in a way that doesn't involve favors and subsidies to corporate friends and severe austerity programs, which work anyways.
Only hurt the poor.
Right. And so all we have left now are these issues of, and we'll call it, they're playing identity politics now, but it's negative identity politics. So they're looking for the boogeyman. They're looking for that scarecrow, and they're trying to scare people into their camp now, or keep them from scurrying away. And I think they're a terribly divided house. And Dwayne Bratt, I don't know if you know Dwayne Bratt, political scientist.
Dwayne's awesome.
He talks about this. Yeah, he talks about this all the time. One day, maybe he'll care enough to come on our show. But he talks about how it's not like the UCP is a united conservative, but it's not. It's two distinct separate entities. No. One is the traditional conservatives that I think Nate mentions and refers to, and I'm accustomed to. I grew up in Alberta. All my friends are going to call them traditional conservatives. Then you've got these Christo-fascist, right-wing, alt-wing, extremist, white supremacist faction that is fallen into the conservative camp through false populism, right? And negative identity politics. And that's all that they have left. So you got guys like Poilievre, ladies like, I'll call her Smith, that are trolling for these votes. What they don't understand is they are kneecapping their chances with the broader electorate because they don't think that. I like to think that's the case, but I would never put it past a conservative to find a way to, they'll pull out an election victory somewhere unexpectedly. But yeah, so this is a broader conservative problem, and I don't see it getting any better, right? Like, the corporate world's answer to why it's failing is apparently fascism. And I think we're seeing more and more of this getting interjected in our media outlets. It's not the fat cat billionaires that are screwing you over and offshoring your jobs and their profits. It's the immigrant, dummy. And that's the messages that I think we're all trying to counter here.
I'm just wondering real quick if Richard can hold the cat up and do this.
Oh, yeah.
To our listeners who are not watching, we've had a bit of a special guest.
Yeah, so I have a hairless cat who requires cuddles from time to time.
Well, they're very dog-like in many ways, are they not? That's what I've been told.
Yeah, he's a real stinker, man. He's just a monster. Just devours food and attention, and yeah, he's something else. Sorry about that interruption, but
that's gonna be some high day right there.
I gotta shave my head next.
Exactly. There you go.
Bald.
Exactly. Yeah. You got a ready-made Halloween costume, man.
Paul, you had something?
Well, what I was thinking was you nailed it, Hugh, and they continue to. Not only do they continue to punch down and blame refugees and immigrants that come to this country or just trying to get a better lot in life, but the fact that they continue nonstop to just continually point the finger of blame at the wrong person. They will take things that are provincial matters, provincial jurisdictions, and Poilievre, all he ever does is blame Trudeau for everything. Inflation, Justin Trudeau. Housing issues, Justin Trudeau. Rent control, Justin Trudeau. The airport lineups, Justin Trudeau. Remove the gatekeepers. Justin Trudeau's a gatekeeper. It's like, dude, you can't even get a goddamn story straight. To begin with, you say you want to cut taxes to bring so people can bring home powerful paychecks, whatever the hell that means. Number one, and number two, you 1 minute you want to talk about nationalizing the grocery chains and the airlines, but you want to get rid of the gatekeepers. So which is it? It can't be both. And oh, by the way, none of that falls under the jurisdiction of the Prime Minister of Canada. None of it. Not a lick of it. And it drives me out of my mind that he continues to spew this absolute bullshit like a sprinkler daily and never is held to task for it. Never. And I mean, he rarely takes a question from a reporter that can actually ask a question. And when they do, I don't know if you saw the way he spoke down to a reporter the other day when she asked him, would he destroy the dental program if he was elected prime minister? Because it was, Jesus, it was, I wanted to smack the shit out of that smug little prick. Sorry, I don't mean to get rude and vulgar, but I want to. I'm not going to. Wanting to do something and actually doing it, remember, are two very distinctly different things. I want $1 million. I'm not about to get it either. So, you know. So, Douglas, you had a point, sir.
Yeah. Given that this election seems to be coming down to what's going to happen in Calgary and how Calgarians are going to vote, because rural Alberta and Edmonton are pretty much decided because those are lopsided races. What are going to be the issues in Calgary? What's going to make the difference between Calgarians voting UCP versus NDP? Because it would seem on the surface, given that it's a more urban area, that the UCP would be at a disadvantage, but polls are seeming to say that they're equal. So how does it play out
They
over
have
there?
to tailor their messaging to the areas and the demographics that they're trying to appeal to. So like the NDP is by nature going to appeal to a younger demographic, simply because you're talking about people who haven't necessarily been raised in the 44 years of conservative rule. So you've got they have a window there. I think the biggest thing that the NDP have to demonstrate, there's two. So the first one is they have to demonstrate that, hey, so I know that everybody's saying that we trashed the economy in 4 years and we ruined everything and lit it all on fire. We're not going to do that. We didn't do that. Here's how. Here's what we're going to do for you. Here's like one of the big critiques that a lot of people have had about the NDP and their campaign thus far, and they're finally starting to pivot a little bit, has been the lack of accessible substantive policy. So they have their little website, and if you want to go through the 5 or 6 barriers to entry to get to the answers that are on that website, it's available. But if you just want to know how you're going to fix healthcare, you got to be able to explain that to Calgarians right now. If you were going to say, how are you going to get ambulances to show up on people's doors in under an hour? You have to be able to say, here's how we're going to do that. How are you going to grow the economy? Here's how you're going to do that. You have to be able to demonstrate the credibility. The other thing that the NDP absolutely has to do is they have to make sure that they're done with their own version of the bozo eruption. Danielle Smith is her own worst enemy. And if she is allowed to continue to self-immolate and the appropriate folks shine a light on that, then it's going to do one of two things. It's going to push people to the NDP. Not a whole lot that's going to happen there, because boy, are we talking about identity in a big way. But the biggest thing it's going to do is it's going to have people stay home. And if people stay home on election day, that is the biggest thing that the NDP can capitalize on. So they have to have good messaging. They did have one kind of bozo eruption light that happened earlier on, and you can land where you will on how they chose to address that, but they moved real fast. And I don't think that the vast majority of the general electorate are even aware of it. So if they can avoid having a Tory Tanner or having a Casey Badu or people who say dumb shit in front of microphones. If they can navigate around that and they can come to the table with some policy that appeals to Calgarians and most importantly assuages their fears about what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my kids, what's going to happen to my job. If they can do that, they got an excellent shot as far as I'm concerned. But if they, I mean, the awards ads, Jesus Christ on a cracker, those were a train wreck. I don't know whose brilliant idea those were, but the one authentic moment that you're going to have for your leader of the party is when she's cursing out the people on the side. Like, they have to stop doing that. But I think, and I'll say this to Notley, and then I'll shut up so the other guys can speak. But one of the biggest frustrations that I have with the NDP and with Rachel Notley is they keep scripting her. She is the polar opposite of Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith has to have a script or she'll say crazy shit. Period. Right. Rachel Notley can't read a script without sounding like she's doing some kind of bad voiceover work. It comes off as insincere. It comes off as dry. They've got to, I hate to steal a phrase from my very favorite TV show, but they've got to let Notley be Notley. And if they do that, then you got a race.
Well, and she doesn't need a script.
No, she doesn't at all.
She's smart.
Absolutely.
She can respond to any question better than I can, obviously. But it's like, don't give her the script. Let her go off script because that's when she's doing her best.
Absolutely. The problem that Rachel Notley has is that people don't trust her because of the narrative that was manufactured. And I'm the first to say Rachel Notley does not control the global economy nor the global energy market. So whatever. But that exists. There is a distrust. And when the presentation of Rachel Notley is the scripted, curated Rachel Notley and it comes off as insincere, the visceral reaction from people is, I don't know if I trust that. If you let Rachel Notley speak as Rachel Notley, you got a game on your hands. And to answer the question that's going on in the chat, yes, it was the Oscars and the Junos. The joke's so funny, it wasn't that funny. They told it twice.
Yeah. There's a number of I don't know if can you guys hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, it just shows my post muted. But that's okay.
No, it's because we were getting an echo from you, so I'll pay attention. Don't worry.
And maybe it's because I talk too damn loud. I'm sorry. I'll keep it down. How's that? It's a real. It's going to be an interesting election. I grew up in Alberta, where a toaster oven, if it called itself a conservative, could get elected, and to some degree that still remains true in parts of the province. I mean, literally, a toaster oven, like. That's the choice. That's who's going to get in, but I don't think it's that way anymore. And I think there are some subtle signs of that leading up before the NDP's majority. I think it's going to be another marker, I think, in the maturation of Alberta politics, where it gets away from this solid blue type of voting mentality. And a lot of progressives are already getting nervous about, well, Notley's not doing this, or they're not being aggressive enough. Like, hell, man, the campaign hasn't even started. I will take some issue with what Nate said about her legacy and the way it's trying to be portrayed. There was a poll done, and I can't recall who it was, if it was Leger or one of the other larger ones. They actually did a poll and it was just this year, about what Albertans thought about the 4 years the NDP got. And something like 56% of respondents said, not bad, not bad. The UCP knows full well that Smith has a terrific credibility problem in the city of Calgary. And she's pretty much admitted to that. In the first instance, not calling the by-election in Calgary elbow, certainly not going to call it in Calgary Lougheed when Kenny resigned, right? And literally telling everybody what her plan was. I'm going to run in rural Alberta because I've got a safe seat. And I'm just going to win all those seats, and maybe we'll get a few in Calgary. Not to mention that this last huge spending election style budget that they put out. Went over like a lead balloon in Calgary. And I can't say I know all of the particulars of the budget. My general understanding, and I stand to be corrected, is there were a number of items in there for suburban Calgary and an LRT line, but really nothing there to deal with the systemic economic problems in Calgary proper, which is what? A loss of those big oil and gas jobs and investment and business presence and whatnot. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how both parties position themselves. But let's just keep a few little things here in mind. And there was another poll that came out, Richard and I are going to talk about it on our show tomorrow, by Leger, that showed that it's neck and neck in Calgary. Edmonton is a runaway for the NDP, and rural Alberta is a runaway for the UCP, and it's going to be a close battle. But let's just put something into perspective. I can just put a little ray of sunshine in everybody's clouds here. This is in spite of a huge spending election-style budget where she's throwing around, $1 billion or so for healthcare, $400 million for education, promising to fix EMS services, promising to make those big bad oil and gas companies pay their back taxes, handed out the Sovereignty Act and a firearms legislation to her base, and handed out some inflationary fighting goodies to people. This is in spite of her keeping a low profile, which is a strategic maneuver on her part until this last story about her meddling again with prosecutors from Arthur Puzzlowski became, news again. And this is also, kind of in spite of all the enormous attack ads that have been going on, paid for by her and Take Back Alberta factions, right? And in spite of all this, no edge. And the campaign hasn't even started. Not only hasn't even told anybody what she's really, what her policy platform is going to be. Here's the goodies. She has mentioned a few things. But it essentially hasn't even it hasn't given the UCP any appreciable. And this is the 30,000-foot view I want to like everybody to take away from it. And so you got to be wondering, if you're a strategist for the UCP and for Smith, and forget what happened about the recording about her meddling with prosecutions. Which is going to come back, by the way. I predicted it. And it's going to come back yet again. Someone's actually going to show the email. What are you going to do to get an edge now, right? And what is she going to do? Is she going to run an entire campaign hiding from people, not saying stuff, playing only to partisan crowds? You wait till the debate comes. You want to notice a difference between leadership style and
debate. Here's the thing about Smith. She is, and I said this about TBA earlier, she is not to be underestimated. Underestimate Danielle Smith at your own peril. She is an incredibly gifted speaker. She makes you feel heard. She makes you feel like you matter. She makes you feel like she's going to fight for you. It doesn't matter what the reality is. It doesn't matter what the facts are. She can make you feel that way. And Danielle's, a year and a half ago, Danielle Smith was the first person to admit that she was unelectable in the province of Alberta. And I know that because I had that conversation with her.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
If you don't think that Danielle Smith can't turn on the charm offensive in a way that for people who haven't been taking very, very close attention to her, oh boy, she can, that is the biggest thing. Everybody's like, oh, they're going to keep Danielle Smith in a box. They will keep Danielle Smith in a box for a little bit longer. But when the time comes for her to be out there schmoozing and talking with people and making everybody feel safe, you were talking about a media personality who has 7 years of experience on a daily basis, making her callers feel comfortable and safe to say whatever it is that they wanted to say. She is, she's not to be underestimated.
But the issue is going to be, she has 7 years of things that she needs to explain. And if the NDP is smart, they're going to rub people's noses in her missteps and her misfortunes for a long time, and they're already doing that, right? Like we pummeled daily on the radio by NDP ads explaining that their narrative that they're building versus what the one the NDP is creating, or that the UCP is creating. Sorry, and I think her trying to privatize, Danielle Smith trying to privatize healthcare is really driving home the message for the NDP of what's going on out there. And this all stems from missteps that Danielle Smith has made herself in the past. They're going to continue to browbeat her over the head with it, because I think that's really the only leverage that the NDP has. Like, we haven't seen any policy proposals come out of them that are really groundbreaking and moving in any way. We haven't seen the UCP do either of the same. It seems to be attack of characters for right now at the moment. Maybe that'll change, but I do think that, you know, she's a liability in more ways than I think anybody's really taking for granted right now.
Okay, that kind of leads me to what you're probably going to say is going to blend in. It kind of leads me into my next question, because Nate, you kind of broached it when you were making your last comment, is that if it's going to come down to these two parties in that area, and from what I'm getting the sense of from the conversation, that it's going to come down to Notley's ability to put policy in the window that's appealing enough versus Danielle's ability to get through a campaign without the campaign being about her.
Oh no, the campaign will be about her.
No, but I mean not her like making gaffes.
Oh, I see.
Because you know, the campaign's going to be about her. It's going to be me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to save you. I'm the only one. That part we get. But I mean, if the campaign is about her, if all the news stories during the campaign are about her, oh, she screwed up, or there's a thing with the bus again, or that. So basically not tripping in the flowers in the carpet, essentially. Who's the better campaigner, and who has the bigger? Is Danielle the person has a bigger risk of saying something, making a bozo eruption of her own that will sink her and make her the story for a couple of days, or will it be the NDP being too timid?
It'll be the NDP being too timid, for sure, 100%. And I say that because Donald Trump. Danielle Smith has spent the last 6 months, by design or by accident, normalizing the daily clusterfuck. That's just the reality. So once it becomes normalized, two things happen. A, it's normalized, and B, I don't know if I really believe that. You know, like, I don't know. Danielle Smith's home territory is Calgary. She knows the lay of the land. She knows the language that people speak. The NDP, I actually think the biggest delineating factor in this is going to be, and it's going to be fascinating to watch because it kind of goes to what you were talking about earlier, Richard, is when it comes to who owns the media space, whether we're talking conventional media, social media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who owns the flow of information? What's the progressive media outlet in Calgary? I'll wait.
Is there one?
I mean, I would argue the Sprawl does a great job, but they're not going to influence the election. There's the niche ones, but when it comes to who's putting out the because I do believe in real journalism, and I take a look at like I'm probably going to get a bunch of people lighting their hair on fire for this, but I take a look at the CBC and the reporting that they've been doing in Alberta over the last 6 months, and I go, oh, thank God someone's on the ball, because they've been absolutely crushing it. But they're in the middle. On the right, we've got True North, we've got the Rebel, we've got all kinds of different options that have built their machines up, and they don't care. Like, you take a look at True North. This is a fun little experiment. I was going to talk about this tomorrow night, but I'll do it here for fun. You take a look at True North. They're the news for conservatives. They're the True North news. They're all the news that's fit to print. If you go to True North's Twitter handle right now and you search for the word Tanner, guess what you don't find?
Mhm.
Anything. They're controlling the flow of the information and they're controlling the flow of the narrative. And progressives are too busy getting into pissing contests about who gets the most Patreon sponsors or who's the most virtue pure, that there's no organization or coordination, and there's nobody who stands out as maybe we should listen to this. Maybe we should get our information from over here.
Let's just bring it back though to what we were saying, what Hugh was saying before about how they're out of ideas. Like, they are left to debating culture war issues to drive people to their base. And
sure,
it's
elections are about how do you make me feel. Anybody who tells you different doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
True.
I get that. But setting that aside, I mean, we're not talking about Albertans getting anywhere in the next 4 years if they go down the path of voting for the UCP. It's going to be more griping, more complaining about Ottawa, and eventually, like I've said this on our show, that party will eat Danielle Smith sooner or later. And that's just an inevitability.
Yep.
Which may or may not be good news for us to be able to poke fun at the bear, I guess, over the next 4 years. But that's literally what we're looking at. And I'll bring it back to what I was saying in the very beginning. It really comes down to how big of a punch in the face rural Alberta is willing to take over the next few elections, not just this one, for things to change in this province.
Well,
let's add to this.
Go ahead. I was just going to show you gentlemen something quickly. I don't know if you saw this. This was from Danielle Smith this morning on her Twitter feed. I'm going to put this up. I'll read it out loud for the people who are listening to the audio only version. From Danielle Smith's Twitter feed. Hey, Calgary. Edmonton has been the center of politics for too long. On Monday, I will table legislation to construct new Alberta legislature buildings in Calgary. Thanks to Free Alberta Rob and at Rebecca Schultzstow for helping draft this important legislation. Now, it's April 1st. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Well, and that's not Danielle Smith's Twitter account.
No. But people went, it's Danielle Smith. Hey, people lost their minds because they thought this was legit. And it's kind of scary because even I was like, is she, I'm like, no, first joke, right? But would you be surprised if she was legitimate, right?
Would I be surprised?
You know,
but you wonder.
It's totally believable.
That's
the thing.
satire.
It's totally.
Satire is when you sit there and you go, yeah, no, wait a minute.
I want to try and answer your question there, Douglas, about what the difference is going to be.
Could you get a little closer to your mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Fading in and out. Yeah, there. That's good. Yeah. Fading in and out a little bit.
Story of my life. Want to try to answer your question a bit there, Douglas, about what's the difference going to be in the election. And we can machinate about strategies and styles and let so and so be so and so and all this stuff and policy. I mean, campaigns matter, leadership matters more, I would argue. Mm-hmm. But really what I think it's going to come down to is the reluctant UCP voter. And all the polling is indicating this. This is going to be make or break. There's a reason why, and I bugged Richard about this back in 2019. There's a reason why the NDP's official colors are orange and light blue, Alberta blue. Mm-hmm. If anyone has an understanding of history of politics in this province, everybody knows those are the traditional PC colors, not the NDP colors. NDP used to actually be purple in this province, but this she is making a play, not Leah, and she's going to have to continue to make a play for those, we'll call them reluctant UCP voters. And it's going to happen one of two ways. Either she's going to appeal to them, like Nate says, with policies and ideas that resonate with them, which, any campaign is going to have to try to do. But they're also going to have to maybe be another edge to this, where she is reminding reluctant UCP voters why they can't go with Smith. There's a whole faction of that. And another sidebar of this is there's a whole faction of the UCP which no longer really has a home now that the Wild Rose part is in charge. And this goes back to decades of infighting in that party, like Dwayne Brad pointed out, where you've got one side stabbing the other, constantly jockeying for position within the party, having the premier's ear, having control and say. So this is going to be really interesting to see where that traditional reluctant UCP vote goes. They either stay at home, which is okay, or they vote NDP, hold their nose and vote NDP, so to speak. But I think that's really what it's going to come down to. How that happens, say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what you say there, because it's someone staying at home, at least for Rachel Notley, is just as good as a vote switch.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, right? It's like either it's like I really must stop them, so I'm going to put a clothespin on my nose and vote NDP, or I just, I can't vote for UCP. But both of them are going to be okay.
And that's what propelled her into power in part in 2015.
That's right.
And I'm telling you, for a little bit of personal anecdote experiences, I had a lot of very conservative friends that voted NDP for the first time, just to show the PCs that they can't take them for granted.
Yeah, guys in my Scotch and Cigar Club, a good chunk of them have been lifelong progressive conservatives, and it's important that I put the progressive in front of it, because they believe in good social programs, they like the idea of a UBI, so on and so forth. But they've always identified as progressive conservatives. The last couple of provincial and federal elections, they voted NDP. Because they said the party that they once supported no longer exists in this country. And it's certainly, they still are called the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario. Doug Ford is not a progressive. Doug Ford is in the pocket of developers. Yeah. He's the most corrupt politician we've ever seen in this province.
Yeah.
And
he's
Danielle
a corporatist,
Smith,
not a conservative.
Yeah, he's a corporatist. That's all it is. That's all it is. And it's a myth that conservatives are good with balancing the budget. It's a long played out myth. They never have ever done it, ever. I mean, look, case in point, Stephen Harper gets in. He inherits a surplus for the first time in since World War I. We had a surplus. The balance was budget. The debt was getting paid off. There was a surplus, and he ran a deficit budget. So now, and let's not get into the FIPA and all that and the successive deficits that he ran, but now that when the Liberal government runs a deficit budget, the sky is falling. But wait a minute, your hero Harper did it for years, and that was okay. Well, you have to understand, Paul, how things work. I do, which is why he's running a deficit budget after we're coming out of a global pandemic that we've not seen in over a century, number one. Number two, millions of people were out of work for extended time periods. What the hell else? Was he going to let us starve? Was he going to let us wither and die and freeze to death? I know Polyev would, because as he said, we're conservatives. We don't believe in big social government spending programs. I'm just exasperated.
The danger in Alberta with budgets, though, is that the UCP's track record, they can say they've had two balanced budgets. They can say that. Now you can get into the nuance, and economists like Dr. Trevor Chin were the first to point out, there's actually a pretty significant structural deficit, because if your oil price goes down, you're losing literally billions of dollars. But on paper, if those oil prices don't go down, they have. The UCP can say, hey, we did two balance. We did the impossible. We took over from the dumpster fire of Rachel Notley, and we balanced the budget. Things are only going to get better. Why would you go with the people who wrecked everything? That's the narrative that the NDP have to be ready to combat.
Yeah, good point.
But a side note on that is, again, the UCP has gotten no appreciable thank you from the polls that are being done, saying these guys. Now, the polling shows that they've got an edge on the economy, right? and the oil and gas industry support. They do. But those polls also indicate the NDP really isn't out of that conversation either.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to address that. I agree. But at the end of the day, they don't have any baton to whack over the head of the NDP economically. I mean, yeah, oil and gas booming, royalties to the roof, but it's not trickling down onto Main Street. And I think that's another thing that's popping up in the polls. And as far as budgets and deficits, like how are you gonna whack the NDP over the head for their budget deficits and the debt they racked up when you outspent them in 2.5 years, what took them 4? Like it's kind of like you don't really have that.
The only reason that they
edge.
were able to outspend is because they did such a good job managing the economy. They had more money in the coffers. That's why. That's the answer.
No. I meant the deficits that they ran. They outspent the NDP in 2.5 years and racked up more debt than the NDP did in 4. That's the point I'm making. Like you don't really have that's a house of cards to stand on.
Well, that's
that narrative
in Alberta for the last 44 years.
True.
I agree, though. I agree with you, Nate. It's frustrating because they will still get credit for it when they shouldn't.
Richard?
I agree. It's BS.
No, I was just gonna say it comes down to being part of the mythos that we talked about before, that the NDP overspent on government and this type of thing, and crashed the Alberta economy when and it was really so strategically linked to the price of oil at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that was just all the point I wanted to make with that.
Cool.
All right. We have. Oops, I'm echoing.
Go ahead.
We have the NDP Oscar ad that I did not know existed before you mentioned it. Mr. Grizzly, if you would, this should be interesting.
Hey, Alberta. Tonight isn't for political speeches. Well, it is, but I'll leave that to the celebrities. Tonight, I want to take a moment to celebrate all the amazing artists across Alberta. As Premier,
here comes the political speech.
I can't wait to bring more of the world's biggest TV and film productions here to work with our amazing local industry and talent while showcasing Alberta's natural beauty. Enjoy the Oscars, everyone! You guys were seriously playing me off?
Pretty good.
I actually like it.
Yeah,
Am I
I
terrible?
like it. Oh, just a sec. Sorry, Hugh. I had you on mute there. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I've never seen that before. That's amazing. Like gobsmackingly amazing. But what's really interesting is for the first time probably in a generation, the NDP has so much money, they can afford to blow it on an ad like that.
Pre-election ads.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay, I have you've all been very, very generous with your time. I had one final question until we hopefully meet again at some point. We've got about 2 months to go. We've got these things going on right now, particularly with that leaked tape and certain candidates or MPs or cabinet ministers deciding that they are not going to run again. What should we be looking for in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Go first, Nate.
Oh, no pressure.
No pressure.
I think that there's
You go
going
first.
to be a lot to look for in the next couple of weeks. I think the biggest thing is, I have been watching with great interest the CBC's reporting because one of the things that's very, very clear with the style of story that they're telling is they're very much playing a long game. And I don't think that the story of the interference is anywhere near done. I think that we're going to see more of that rolled out. The exact timing, I have no idea. But I do think that we're going to see more and more of the CBC story in regards to Danielle Smith interfering with the prosecutors or a member of her office I mean, we get DMs here, and some of the versions of events, I'm not going to get threatened to be sued again quite so quick. So we're gonna let the real reporters do the real reporting. But I don't think that story is anywhere near done, and I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that that I'm going to be looking for. I think that we're going to start to see the tour, as it were. The campaign is, I'm not sure who said it earlier, but I got to disagree. The campaign's in full swing. It's been in full swing for a couple of months now. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see the events. Here's the fundamental problem with Alberta politics. If you take a look at any pick a number on a calendar from last month, let's look at March, and let's just pick a random number. And if you asked anyone on any of those days, hey, would you have seen this coming? The reaction from most people is going to be, well, no, but I believe it. Like, that's totally on brand. Of course, of course Casey Madhu said, do I believe that it was appropriate? No, of course he said that, because he's just playing with words now. So I think that there's some broad, I want to be clear. Everybody always says, Nate, you're just dunking on the NDP, and I'm not just I dunk on everybody, but I am optimistic, and I would love to see the NDP show up and play a real ground game in Calgary. I think that could be an absolute game changer. I hope that they can learn to speak Calgarian. We have we're heading into, I was outside earlier today in my 82 LeBaron, and you're damn straight I had the top down, and it was glorious. So we're talking about prime event weather. We're talking about prime door knocking weather. If the NDP shows up and is able to deliver on those fronts, then I think that we got ourselves a horse race.
Can we go back to the 82 Chrysler LeBaron? It's a convertible.
Damn straight
That's
it
a
is.
beauty, brother. That's a beauty.
That was my
I'm
midlife
envious.
crisis gift to myself for
It's only going to
$500
be
whole dollars.
awesome if it's brown.
No, it's white because of the cake swap.
Even
And that's the end of this episode of Car Talk.
But I think that, I think the CBC story, watching that unfold, and the other pieces of that unfold is going to be, that's what I'm like. I'm just sitting here with my bowl of popcorn ready to go. Because that's going to be, here's the thing, like, everybody dunks on the CBC, but the reporters that are doing those stories, they are I have said this before, I'm going to say it again. They're the biggest protection that we have for our democracy right now, period. Full stop. Everybody can pontificate on social media all they want, but those reporters, the Megan Grants, the Elise Von Shields, they are doing the heavy lifting to protect our democratic institutions, and somebody should buy them cake.
There you go.
Absolutely.
All right. Richard and Hugh, what should we be looking for in the next few weeks?
No, I think Nate hit it right on the head. Like, this CBC story has legs, and it's not going anywhere. It's totally going to walk all over them. My prediction is more bozo eruptions. They're definitely bound to happen, especially with the picking of this particular slate of characters for Take Back Alberta faction of the UCP, and that's something I think we can all look forward to, is a guarantee that's going to be happening. Whether or not that's enough to sour the milk that the UCP is prepared to dispense to everyone, who knows what's going to happen in the long run. Right now, the polls are saying that it's going to be a tight race. I mean, we give some polls more emphasis than we do others, and I think it's only time will tell what's going to be happening. I think the only guaranteed, like I said before, one of the only guarantees we're going to see is that party devouring its leader at some point.
Yep, I see that in ideological parties. There's always that point where things don't go right, and then some ideologue comes along to say that the current ideologue isn't ideological enough.
Yeah,
and then they munch away.
we've
You know who
definitely
the
seen.
only premier to serve their full term in like the last 15 years was?
Rachel
Rachel
Notley.
Notley.
Not like no,
Yeah.
not like
Rachel
true.
Notley, yeah.
True.
Unbelievable.
And that's going to be, and that's another, arrow in their quiver for the NDP. It is, we are. It's a really interesting position. They are now like the stable
Yeah.
option, right? They are. It's the UCP that is the chaos agent in this election, and that's going to be another part of the messaging, no doubt. Bozo eruptions. Dwayne Bratt, that guy, he just keeps pointing it out, the obvious. He talked about David Parker, if anyone knows. He's the guy behind Take Back Alberta. And the Bozo eruptions, the lake of fire people now, I think these people have been emboldened like never before, that they feel this is their time. They're finally in charge of this party. They are calling the shots. They're the ones that were pushing for R-Star. They're the ones pushing for the Alberta Sovereignty Act. Like, she can't just shove those things underneath the carpet and pretend they didn't happen. She's got a lot of splaining to do. Ground games, always important. Tours, campaigns, strategies, leadership, always important. I think the thing that I'm going to be keeping my eye on is what's the strategy the NDP is going to employ to target, micro-target those ridings they think they'll have an advantage of. And I do believe that there's going to be a number of rural ridings that they're going to be competitive in for a number of reasons, not just that they'll be fighting against R-Star. There's also huge concerns about the healthcare system in rural Alberta, EMS services. There's huge concern about rural Alberta being able to fund their own infrastructure. There's unpaid taxes. There is a real concern that they're going to be force-fed a provincial police force for which everyone in rural Alberta knows they are going to have to pay more for. I have a lot of, I've got experience in that law enforcement area, and I know how a lot of those contracts are designed with the RCMP. They're going to lose out if they get rid of the RCMP, and they know it. So there's a number, and then there's a pledge by Notley to bring 5G network internet to rural Alberta. So there are going to be some rural parts in play for the NDP, but it's how do they exploit those opportunities, and are they able to execute? So, you can talk a great game, but you have to execute, like Nate said. If they don't have a ground game in Calgary, they are done. Forget it. But what's interesting is now with this Take Back Alberta, let's call overtaking of the UCP riding associations, and a lot of their incumbents in Calgary opting not to run, although Rajan Sawhney apparently has thrown her name back in the hat. There is a real question now from the UCP part or side that they are actually going to have much of a ground game. So that's going to be another really interesting.
Mr. Grizzly, do you have any things that you're looking at for the next few weeks?
Well, I mean, I'm reading this story here by our friend David Kleiman Haga right now. Is it Haga or Haga? I can't remember how to pronounce it.
Haga?
I would say Haga.
Yeah.
Haga?
Haga?
Screw him.
Anyway,
say Haga.
We've had Haga. We've had David on the show before. Good guy.
Did somebody say Haagen-Dazs? Sorry.
Anyway, he's got an article here that I'm just reading. It's about Danielle Smith's long mission to privatize healthcare.
Yeah.
I think that's something the NDP should hop on and say, listen, this woman wants to do this. She drank the Kool-Aid back in the 90s when she was an intern at the Fraser Institute, and she believes firmly that healthcare fully belongs in the private sector. Look, if you want to destroy your political career, you talk about privatizing healthcare.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people who like the idea of, well, I don't want to wait in a line. Well, you know what? Millions of people will die. Or face medical bankruptcy like they do daily in the United States of America. Want a heart transplant? No problem. $500,000, you're good to go. The privatization of healthcare is evil. Period. Evil. You want to have a two-tiered system? I don't say that I'm fully against it, but I need to make sure that the public system gets 90% of the support. Actually, it should get 100% of the support. The public system should be not receiving a single public dollar. Nothing. If you want to pay out of pocket, knock yourself out. I shouldn't be paying for that. I'm happy for my tax dollars to contribute to public systems. That's what they're there for. And she really wants to hammer this home. She's trying to privatize it. She already talked about, what was it, a medical health account where you would have certain credits that you would use. I'm like, what? She's well on her way to privatizing healthcare in the province of Alberta, and Albertans do not care for that.
They don't.
So Rachel Notley would be in her best interest to hammer the hell out of that
And
one.
she is.
Forget, not even just this thing with
Yeah.
Pawlowski, that phone call, which, I mean, how she can have a political life after this is beyond me. Because I know one thing about Albertans is they believe in law and order and justice and following the law. And she's trying to circumvent it. Well, I'm talking about rural Albertans, Nate. They're big on, you know, yeah.
Do they?
The ones I know.
Yeah, Nate,
Here's my question on that.
Yeah.
Just to challenge that assertion, I think that you're right in the broadest of senses, but I think that law abidingness goes so far as long as it doesn't affect me. And I would say that we don't have to look much farther than some very high profile cases that included, I think that person might be trespassing, or I think they might want to trespass. So I'm
going to shoot him. Yeah. Good point.
The commitment to law and order, or it's very tribal.
Yes.
It's just tribal. And conservatives would be like, well, we could do it because liberals will do it, or the NDP do it, and they're corrupt. So it's easily brushed off. It's very tribal. That commitment to law and order. This is again where we get back to the reluctant UCP voters and those traditional PC voters and what they're going to do. That's like, that message resonates more strongly with them. Lots of anecdotal evidence that indicate that they're not happy at all with the direction that Smith wants to take.
I mean, look at I think what Albertans love about law and order is the picture, the image of, if I call for a police officer because I'm scared, that police officer is going to be there right away. I don't think that it extends to actually addressing the underlying causes of the things that I think are scary, because all you have to do is take a look at how many supervised consumption sites we've closed and or moved in the province of Alberta, when all of the evidence is that's one of the biggest things that not only makes a dent in the number of opioid deaths, the surrounding crime, it actually have a net negative effect on the amount of needles that are in it and all of the places. So they actually suck needles into their system. We don't want to do that here. We don't want to address the underlying problems. The candidate for, I watched a video this afternoon where the candidate for Danielle Smith's riding, who's the mayor of, I think it's either Claresholm or Nanton, one of the two. There's candy shops and good potato wedges. But she straight up says, the problem is that people don't take care of themselves. They don't take any personal responsibility. Also, we have to take care of our neighbors. And it's like, can you square that circle for me, please? But it resonates, because now we're not talking about we need to take care of the person who has, XYZ trauma. It's we need to take care of the person who's like me, who's in my community.
Right.
That's what they're really saying. It's not let's deal with the underlying problems so that nobody has to deal with the shit. It's I want my little sandbox to be pretty. Don't mess up my sandbox, which is again why elections are all about how you make me feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, what I'll be watching for over the next few weeks, because the thing with Pawlowski, the thing that interests me is this guy felt the need to have to record that, and during the conversation he mentioned certain things about him feeling like things weren't progressing or not moving, so it feels like these people to whom she's beholden feel that they need to monitor and track and record everything, and she's going to be doing a very interesting dance the closer the election date comes, and she might have a case of Aaron O'Toole disease.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So I'll be waiting to see if how that faction starts turning, just sort of like when Poliver, when he made that speech at that Ukraine rally, and so now we see your true colors, and then a couple of people left there, and then he denounced Christine allegedly without doing it, and then a couple more people left, and there's that dance that they do, and I'm going to see what happens with that dance.
It's the razor's edge on which all conservative leaders have to sit on. Which side are they going to slip down? And guys like Kozlowski, who was actually started the Alberta Independence Party or something like that, got kicked out. He was the leader. Other people like Derek Fillebrand, which also had the Alberta Western what's it called,
Western
Independence Party. And many others. In Saskatchewan, there's the Buffalo Party, right? Like these, and Tamara Lech was like part of that group too, right? So all these disparate groups are watching, and for, like you said, Douglas, things that they say, and in that conversation she has with Kozlowski, you can see as she's trying to like ride this line, like I got to show empathy and show this guy I'm on his side, but I still have like apparently like
and tell you I'll see what I can do, even though as I'm telling you I'm not sure there's because we don't have that here.
And Rich and I will talk about this in our show tomorrow too, about that conversation. Why did he have to? That's interesting. Nothing illegal in that, by the way.
But they don't trust her.
And what's also interesting was the response from her office, and this goes to speak to what Nate was saying about CBC and the level of professionalism, the kind of journalism they're doing. They didn't just release this copy they got from Pulaski. They never owned it. He gave it to them. Interesting choice, Mr. Pulaski. And then they gave her and her office an opportunity to make a comment on it before they ran with the story. So they're being very much above board with this. That'll be really interesting to see. And I think it's going to come back to Nate. But my take on it is it's going to. If an email was sent to a prosecutor, you better believe a lawyer has kept a copy of that. Somebody somewhere is sitting with a PDF copy of that on their laptop, and they're going to wait for the right time to release it.
I'd say about
and it won't be the
9
CBC's
days
fault.
before voting day.
Yeah, we hope so.
On a Thursday,
so I got one more
Thursday. So let's see. That was you know what? Let's start a poll. Hold on. Voting day is the 29th.
Allegedly.
So, let's see.
Allegedly.
So, allegedly the 29th.
Yeah.
So the 19th is 2 Fridays before. Let's say that's going to happen on the Thursday. Plenty of time to talk about it on the weekend and the whole next. So yeah, May 18th.
Well, and one last comment about that release of that audio is the release of that audio was, how she goes about blaming the CBC and not taking issue with anything about Pulaski or what she did or shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
She instantly vilified the CBC. And Rob Anderson, her chief of staff, who's also a lawyer and should know better, was saying it was disgusting and beneath contempt that they would release this. Well, guess what? That's what good responsible journalists do. And they fact check. And they gave you guys a chance to refute it. You didn't. Instead, you just want to play the blame CBC.
How dare you broadcast inconvenient truths and unflattering things about me?
Can I make one last point and then I'll shut up, I promise?
Sure.
That's it.
We need to have a real conversation in this country about how we fund things. Because if we're going to say that we need to have publicly funded healthcare that's responsible for delivering publicly funded healthcare in a safe and responsible way, because of the high stakes that are involved with the outcomes, because of the issues with accessibility, then everybody who's running around saying defund the CBC, you need to go check yourself. Because if we allow the only people who are producing media or producing journalism to be people who are at the end of the day responsible for a bottom line and a profit margin, then the exact same arguments that we're trying to defend our public healthcare system need to be utilized in regards to defending our public journalism system, because otherwise it becomes about clicks and it becomes about money. So everybody who's saying, there's some things the CBC could for sure be doing better. I don't like the fact that they're doing their profitable podcasting. I think that's sketchy as all hell. But we need these people to be doing the excellent jobs that they're doing. Otherwise, we're in a whole lot of trouble.
Right.
Well, and who's screaming for the defund? Who's the biggest?
Well, the people who already own their
of
own
that?
media conglomerations.
Well, but I mean, no. Who's the biggest? The politician that screams at the loudest and the most often? Pierre Poilievre.
Well, he's got true.
He wants to defund the CBC. Yeah, exactly. And they're firmly in each other's pockets. So, I just have one last thing to post here. I'm just going to put it up, and you can take a look at this photo and tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me what your thoughts are about this. So she's holding the copy of the Druthers newspaper. She has Freedom hats, On Guard We Stand, and F. Trudeau hats for sale. I think that's a bottle of urine on the table. Placed her jacket on the statue of Terry Fox, which is akin to me wanting to go stabby on people. And if you look up at this little banner here, what does that say? World Economic Forum, Agenda 21. Oh, for Christ's sake, the Q-nuts are on the hill.
Oh, that's today.
That's right now, like an hour ago. Literally an hour ago.
Yeah, here's my question.
Tens of people came to Ottawa to let the government know that they are a movement with broad public support. Breaking news.
These people are so pissed off about like the economy and everything. Where the hell do they get the disposable income to do this stuff?
Right,
dude.
Right.
Go get a job.
Make better
Go
choices
get a
with your
job,
money.
bum.
I work 70 hours a week. I don't have time to, like somebody said, why don't you run down? And I go, I don't. I was editing all day today. And then we're doing a live show. I don't have the time to do that shit. So they're complaining about the economy and all these horrible things that Trudeau have done, and yet they have the time and the freedom to do it.
Why don't they all just go get a job? Yeah. Hey, why don't you just stop being a bum on CERB money, get off your lazy butt, and go get a job like the rest of us?
I just think we really need to underscore that the World Economic Forum is headquartered out of Switzerland. So if you really want to fight the fight,
go.
That's where you go.
Head
That's
that
where you
way.
fight.
Hop on the plane, y'all.
Go to Davos.
Please.
Let us know how it turns out.
Yeah,
you might have to be there for a while. It's a big machine.
Then you see all these
Plan
people
on
coming
staying
back
for a couple of
corrupted.
years.
Well, that's the grift.
Yeah,
Then you see all
remember,
these people come back corrupted. Oh my God, Davos was wonderful. It's like
remember
you're really missing out.
everybody over the age of 18 in Switzerland who is able-bodied, and I mean you are capable of serving in the army, has to do mandatory military service. Everybody over the age of 18 who is physically capable does this. And when you leave, they issue you an automatic weapon. Everybody over the age of 18 who has served in the army has a fully automatic rifle at home.
Yes, it's one of the countries with the highest level of personal gun ownership in the world.
And well-trained individuals, because they've all taken military training. So very high gun ownership, but very responsible gun ownership. And where am I going with this? Well, these freedom folks want to go and raise hell in Switzerland, eh? With the World Economic Forum.
Oh, please.
How do you think that's going to turn out?
Oh, please, oh, please.
How's that going to turn out when you piss off a bunch of Swiss fellas and ladies who just don't want to put up with your bullshit?
Wait a minute, I thought you all were supposed to be neutral.
A bunch of gun-toting socialists. Look out.
Exactly.
Switzerland, they're so far left, you get your guns back.
I've been 15 times. One of my dearest friends in the world lives just outside of Zurich. She lived in Geneva for about 17 years, and now she lives in Zug, which is 45 minutes south of Zurich. So I've been many, many times. I love the country. I love the people. It's a great place. If you ever get a chance, go.
I'd love to.
One of the things I find most refreshing about it is they don't get a lot of outside tourists from this part of the world. You know what I'm saying? From this part of the world, south of the 49th is what I'm getting at.
Mr. Grizzly, I think we have a show.
Sounds good to me, sir. I think we do. Gentlemen, thanks for coming out.
Yes. Well, Kits and Kubs.
Thanks for having
That's
us.
the end of this episode of the True North Eager Beaver, our Alberta election specials. We hope you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, and you have the mouths whose words we want coming out of. So, hey, tell your friends about us, right? Tell your enemies about us. We don't care. Because democracy is something that you do. Please write your MP, your MPPs, your MLAs, your senators, and members of the media to tell them that you are not having any more of this shit. You want people to stop being distracted by the brush fires and stick with the main stories and maybe perhaps ask the obvious follow-up question. Maybe. All right. So you know what to do, right? Because the letter campaigns matter. Right? More than email, more than calling. This way, if you take the time to actually handwrite, that counts.
A post on Twitter or Facebook is not ever going to do a damn thing to sway anybody on Parliament Hill. They don't even pay attention to it.
And you don't need a stamp.
Yeah, just drop it in the mail, to address it to your MP or MPP or MLA, and it gets delivered to them. It won't cost you anything.
Right. Now, if you really like this podcast, you can find us on the Crier Media Network, as well as all Beaver Grizzly friendly platforms. Stars and reviews are appreciated. Of course, we won't tell you how many. We'll just suggest subliminally. So, yeah, be generous, please. And if you have comments, we'd love to hear from you. Good, bad, or ugly. If ugly, please be gentle. You can reach us on our Facebook page, True North Eager Beaver there, at True Eager on our Twitter feed, or True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com. And you can subscribe to us at our pod page, podpage.com/The True North Eager Beaver, all lowercase letters, hyphen between each one of those words, and we'll come straight to you. And when you have something fresh off the bandwidth, why not also subscribe to our True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube channel? Yes, we are captains of industry now. That helps us out big time. We are so close to 200. We need at least 1,000 to monetize this joint. So come on, clickety-clack, all right? Okay. And we can't do this without you or your generous support. So if you feel we've done a particularly good show, if you loved our guest, if you loved the quality, well, that little QR code by Mr. Grizzly's head right there is that what you scan, and that will bring you to our emergency Guinness/Caesar/hot chocolate/coffee fund, because we need our staff to do our shows, and our staff keeps on disappearing. So we need your help. If you're listening,
I'm staff.
No. What's in the cup is the staff.
Oh, that's what
Caesars
you mean.
to help me edit, hot chocolate to help me write, smoothies to help me research, just my staff.
Guinness to keep me sane.
Chocolate to keep me happy. So if you'd like to help some people out, some critters out, well, then if you're listening, you let those beautiful fingers do the walking to our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, lowercase letters. And that's where you can make your donation and make sure that we are well watered. And somebody will turn us towards the sun. Don't worry about that. So, from the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver saying, until next time, dear kids, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourselves. A very, very, very big thank you to our willing accomplices, Nate Pike from the Breakdown, Alberta. Please listen to it. It's a great show. And our newfound friends, Richard and Hugh Gordon from Albertastan Live. You absolutely have to listen to that. Good quality information if you're living in the Wild Rose province. So, and if you want to be informed to make very, very, very good decisions come May 29th or before, if you happen to be voting early. Vote early, but don't vote often.
You can only vote once.
Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom for us before we go?
Yeah, I do. And this is going to piss some people off.
Oh, goody.
Stay woke.
Ooh. What does that even mean?
Woke? Well, it means
right.
to be sensitive to racial matters and make sure that the world is a better place by righting wrongs and stopping injustices and punching Nazis.
All right. And for our guests, we will ask you too. Do you have words of wisdom for us before we go? Richard?
Just stay sane. Don't let the fear take over, and just realize that there's a lot more good people out there than there are bad.
All right.
Agreed.
Good words. Hugh? Oops.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. There we go. Apologies.
Oh, no. I've got nothing to add. I got no advice for other human beings. My life is a mess. It's a tragedy.
Okay, wait a minute. We need to go on here. What tell us more. No. That's a whole other show.
In other words, don't do what I do.
Yeah. I don't know. Keep her between the ditches. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's
all right. Nate?
I mean, with the ditches thing, I just want to say everybody should have a Rob Anderson, apparently. But what I'll actually say is I think that if there was one thing, and this is how I try to end the show when we do it. By the way, tomorrow night at 8 Mountain Standard Time. But if I was going to say one thing, we have to get better at having conversations with people.
Yeah.
We have to get better at communicating with people. And so the call to action that I try to throw out to people at the end of every one of our episodes is, even if it's uncomfortable, find one person a week to have if you live in Alberta, find one person a week to have a conversation about Alberta politics with, because even if it is uncomfortable, you're going to learn how to have those conversations better. And no matter what, you almost certainly aren't embarrassing yourself in front of an internet audience of who knows how many people. So it could be so much worse. But I always end with the tagline, keep the conversation going. And I do that because we have to have these conversations. Everybody gets so squirrely about like, oh, but politics. Well, yes, but they're coming for you. So what would you like to do about that?
And before we go, where can the Kits and Kubs find you?
Go ahead, Nate.
It depends on the day. A lot of people seem to think that I hang out in my mom's basement, which isn't actually the truth. But if you want to follow us on the Twitter machine, it's at pretty much all of the social media is at the Breakdown AB. We're most prolific on Twitter, and we do have the YouTube channel. And we do live shows. We do shows every Wednesday and Friday at 8:00. 50% of the time it's live, 50% of the time it's interviews. We've got tomorrow's going to be a spicy one because it's going to be live. But on Wednesday, we also have a very, I'm excited about it, conversation with one of the directors of an organization that is trying to raise awareness around Tourette's syndrome, because you can't do politics all the time. You got to talk about how politics affect people. So we're dropping that on Wednesday, and it was a delightful conversation. We got some other really good conversations coming up as well. So on the podcast, the Breakdown with Nate Pike, and occasionally I do like root beer Slurpees, so you can find me at your local neighborhood Circle K.
Root beer, oh man, after my heart. Okay. Richard, and you. Where can we find you?
You can find us on Facebook. We run a pretty big showing on Facebook, and you can also find us on any other social media platform: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, which I already mentioned, and Instagram. And we have a little bit of a following there, and you can keep up to date and everything that's going on our YouTube channel.
I wanted to ask you something.
Go ahead.
Real simple. How are you guys able to post video to Apple Podcasts? Because I didn't know you could do that.
We found that out today.
It's all in an MP4. And so what's really interesting is I actually steal the MP4 from the Facebook upload and repost it on our Libsynth podcast registry. And so that's been a little bit of a development over the last little while. So,
yeah, because you're driving, traffic with the audio version, but having the video element is really appealing to a lot of people. So I didn't know you could do that on Apple. So yeah, we're going to investigate that.
Pretty interesting, guys. Check it out.
Yeah. Yes. Same here. Same here. Anything coming up on your show soon, Hugh? Where Kits and Kubs would like to listen?
Sorry, say that again.
Anything special coming up on your show soon for the Kits and Kubs who might want to tune in?
Probably something.
All right.
Well, funny you should mention, because just before we went to air here today, I was prepping for tomorrow's show. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, tune in to Albertastan on Facebook Live. Albertastan Live on Facebook. I got it backwards. I'm already screwing this up. We're going to be talking about the Orange Man. Starting the show off about the Orange Man finally being indicted. That's big news. We're going to get into Danny Smith and her adventures in Toryland, and then we're going to get on to a little bit of what's going on in Saskatchewan, because I live here in Saskatoon. I'd like to touch on a few matters there. Then we're going to gab a little bit about the budget that came out, federal budget, and then maybe finish up on good old Ron DeSantis' battle at Disney down in Florida.
Ah, yes.
I like it.
Very well owned. I like that.
I like
it. Ron DeSanctimonious.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
All right, kids, that's our show. Thank you very much, Mr. Grizzly.
Thank you
Please
so
roll the
much.
credits, and thank you so much, guys, for coming on. And we hope to
Oh.
see you over the course of this project, and of course on our final night on the 29th for the election results show.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum. And the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Have a beaverific weekend.
I'm going to the pub. I need a pint. See ya.